on WURD TV, WURD TV at youtube.com/onWURD and facebook.com/4WURD as well. Good morning to everyone. Happy hump day, as some folks will say out there. Happy midday, midweek to you. I'm Charles Ellis, and I'm your executive producer, host, and creator of Reality Check here on WURD. And you can catch me at Ellison Report on twitter.com, #RealityCheck, for your daily dose of public affairs, of politics, public policy, all wrapped into one, from Philly to DC, the nation's capital. How are you all doing? Phone lines are open at the moment at the top of this 10 o'clock hour. We are at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. It is very busy on Capitol Hill these days in the nation's capital right now. In fact, we're watching a House Oversight Committee of U.S. Postal Service Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. He is testifying before that House Oversight Committee, looking at ways to, or various policy or legislative options to stabilize the U.S. Postal Service. So Louis DeJoy, as you remember, as particularly a lot of Philadelphians and Pennsylvanians recall, Louis DeJoy, Trump appointed Postmaster General, who had engaged in quite a few controversial activities, stripping down the Postal Service's ability to deliver mail during the elections, particularly at a time when there was so much reliance on mail ballots. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about that in that House Oversight Committee hearing, which is taking place as we speak. Also, yesterday, folks were watching before, of course, out in California, Tiger Woods had it in his head to get into an accident. So, it's still investigating the circumstances behind that. But, definitely a lot of folks out there, particularly in the Gulf War, hoping Tiger Woods does well. But before that suddenly became top news, really the top news coming out of the nation's capital yesterday was, what did law enforcement, what did federal intelligence and a variety of other agencies know about the impending attack on the seat of government on January 6th. That was a major hearing, a joint session of two major committees in the Senate, the Senate Homeland Security Committee, and also the Senate Rules and Administration Committee. The Senate Rules and Administration Committee has authority over the U.S. Capitol Police. U.S. Capitol Police, as you know, nearly a 3,000 person strong force that is tasked with the security, with the protection of 545 members of the joint chambers of Congress. And so that's a very significant, very large, that's a police force that's nearly half the size of the Philadelphia Police Department, protecting a population that is much, much smaller than the city of Philadelphia. So, and that's why so many people are still stunned and baffled as to how the U.S. Capitol Police was not prepared for that attack on January 6th. Folks are acting as if that attack on January 6th happened years ago. It happened just last month. Let me repeat, the attack on the seat of government, the terrorist attack on the seat of government took place just last month. There was a major hearing on it, investigating why exactly intelligence was missed. To see also, lots of speculation out there about whether certain law enforcement agencies, particularly the U.S. Capitol Police, and we're also getting word of more than 24 or nearly 36 various U.S. Capitol Police officers under some form of investigation for their alleged role in allowing insurgents or terrorists to breach the U.S. Capitol campus. So that is happening as we speak. That was a big deal yesterday. That was the top news yesterday, not anything else. That was the top news over our seat of government, literally inches away from being completely overrun. So that was a big deal, and that happened last month. So that very intriguing, riveting, and troubling testimony, particularly given by former or ousted U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen's son. Stephen's son essentially trying to blame everyone but himself. There was conversation about FBI bulletins that were being received by the U.S. Capitol Police, warning them that there was an inordinate amount of online social media chatter in which white nationalists, domestic terrorist extremists were calling for violent attacks on the Congress. And those bulletins were very real. Those bulletins were very loud, and they were at a high alert status for the top officials at the U.S. Capitol Police. And there's just no indication. There's a lot of confusion. There was a lot of confusion during those hearings yesterday as to exactly what was going through the minds of top brass at including former Capitol Police Chief Stephen's son, when those warnings came in. So, especially when the Capitol Police receives a variety of intelligence from about 18 different federal agencies on a regular basis. In fact, Stephen's son calls the Capitol Police, quote, a consumer of intelligence. The other piece to this, too, is, not just in terms of this attack on the U.S. Capitol, but it really speaks to the influence of social media at a time like this, and trying to determine when does social media chatter, when does social media conversation, social media threats, when does that translate into some form of action? And there was a lot of confusion. So that's also what federal law enforcement officials with the U.S. Capitol Police, folks like former Capitol Police Chief Stephen's son, were trying to say, that they couldn't determine. They saw all this chatter, but it's basically, in so many ways, they were basically admitting that they didn't take it seriously because it was social media chatter. And so, but you did have lawmakers, you did have other folks testifying who were saying, in the future, we're going to have to take, an accumulation of threats, dialogue, and discussion in digital form on a variety of social media threads, because this is how these various groups and organizations are contacting each other and communicating with each other. We're going to have to take it much more seriously. I would also go to say, that applies not just to terrorist activity, that also applies to crime, particularly in a high violent crime city like Philadelphia. That's one of the problems with violent crime in Philadelphia, and the fact that Philadelphia police and other law enforcement officials, public officials in Philadelphia, are having such trouble solving violent crime or mitigating or reducing violent crime in a city like Philadelphia, which is right now at 75 homicides as of yesterday, this year 2021. It was 53 homicides the same time last year. So we're at about 42% more deaths, more murders in Philadelphia than we were the same time last year. But the Philadelphia police finds itself incapacitated when it comes to exploring the sorts of conversations that are happening amongst perpetrators or potential perpetrators of violence online, on social media thread forums and platforms like Reddit, or looking a little bit deeper into Instagram. So you do have, for example, many young people who are perpetrating that young violence on the streets of major cities like Philadelphia. And, they're sharing some of those exploits, some of those violent exploits on social media, or they're threatening to commit that kind of violence. And Philadelphia police and other police departments are not catching up. So folks are going to have law enforcement, particularly to keep societies and communities safe. They're going to have to learn ways to first, be able to, waddle through, explore, all the bits and pieces of data and social media conversation to determine and take a bit more seriously a lot of that conversation and language, and determine which just talk and what is actually going to become more than just talk, but an actual violent act. Let me go to Mr. Rick out of Germany, who's been waiting patiently for a reality check. Mr. Rick, how are you doing, sir? How are you feeling today?
Still not eating, brother. Still not eating.
That's not good.
I'm doing soups. Mixing vegetable juices and soup, and living off of that for the moment.
Okay.
I can barely get out of bed, but I'm still ambulatory.
Okay.
Let me say this to you.
Yes, sir.
Those people you saw on January 6th, those were the retarded nationalist Caucasians. The healthy gun owners and the military vets are waiting at home in heartland America. They're waiting for integration to come from the East Coast and the Gulf Coast to come west. And they don't intend to stand for that. Second,
that's a very good point you're making, Mr. Rick, because, particularly, this is why people need to pay attention to things like climate crisis patterns, because, and I've seen those projections. I've seen those scientific projections of, places down south, the East Coast, the Southeast, parts of Southwest, as they become flooded, as they become hit with drought. If we don't take care of this now, if we don't figure out a way to avert real serious apocalyptic climate crisis in the future, people are going to move more towards the Midwest. They're going to move more towards up north. They're going to move more towards out in the West, Pacific Northwest. And there are pockets of very unfriendly people waiting in those vast mountainous and forest-laden regions and farmlands. No, you have the heartland. That's something to be very wary of.
Second, the Native American woman, Deb Haaland. Can you highlight what's going on with her in Washington, D.C.?
She is currently she is President Biden's nominee for head of the Department of Interior, for Secretary of Interior, which would be truly historic, right? She'd be the first indigenous or Native American cabinet official or presidential cabinet official. Obviously, she'd be the first to lead the Department of Interior. The Department of Interior is the federal agency with the most interaction with indigenous communities, indigenous tribal lands, and that's where the government, the federal government, coordinates or handles its activity or interaction with Native populations in the or indigenous populations in the U.S. That confirmation is being held up by obviously Republicans and conservatives, but it's also being held up by a Democratic senator out of West Virginia, Joe Manchin, who does receive and you'll find that people like Joe Manchin and other Republicans in Congress who receive very significant amounts of campaign contributions from the oil and gas industry are right now at this moment holding up Haaland's confirmation because she's a very progressive-minded congresswoman out in New Mexico, and she has long fought battles regarding environmental justice, environmental injustice. And some of those battles have ended up against the fossil fuel industry. So they're not taking too kindly to this nomination, and they're holding it up. It's a historic nomination, but we'll see what happens. And it all depends on the type of conversations that President Biden and his folks have with Senator Joe Manchin. Senator Joe Manchin also holding up Biden's nomination, another woman of color, Neera Tanden, who is one of the founders, president of the Center for American Progress, which we partnered with to bring you those Cap Corners. But and we've had Neera Tanden here on this show, but she's been nominated as head of the Office of Management and Budget for the federal government. So there are Republicans and then a Democrat, Joe Manchin, of course, having issues there. It seems like her nomination is all but done. That's probably not going to go through as the way things stand right now.
Charles?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that brothers and sisters out on those Native American reservations are also dying in high numbers?
I am.
COVID is not to be played with.
It's not. They're also...
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Rick. And our indigenous brethren and sistren are dying from coronavirus at anywhere from double to triple the rate of whites in this country. So their COVID-19 infection, death, and infection, hospitalization, and death rates are as high as folks in the Black community, and they're having issues too with finding equitable access to vaccines. So, particularly as far as Black and indigenous populations are concerned, and the the impact of coronavirus, of this pandemic, we're definitely all in the same boat. So I appreciate Mr. Rick making that point. Lamar out of Camden is calling in for a reality check. Lamar?
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
I think that the Democrats are being too nice, even with Joe Manchin. I think we need to call these Republicans and Joe Manchin out on their hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Because I remember Republicans saying that a president can have whoever he wants to have in his cabinet. You remember what they used to tell us that? And I got to say, when they talk about qualification, Ben Carson for HUD secretary, you know, they want to talk about someone's degrees and what they can do and what they cannot do. On the issue of this Capitol riot, I think that we need to stop playing games and stop calling these people honorable and sir and ma'am and things of that nature, because what Ron Johnson did was despicable.
It was.
And I think that we need to call a spade and stop having to wear that little lapel pin with a flag on it.
And just to give people just real quick too, Lamar, before you go on, Senator Ron Johnson out of Wisconsin spewing all sorts of mythology and QAnon conspiracy theories, saying that the attack on the U.S. Capitol was committed by folks affiliated with Antifa, people who were posing as MAGA or Trump supporters. Yeah, that's Ron. The sitting U.S. Senator did that yesterday in a hearing, in a Senate hearing.
Yeah, you know what, Charles? I find it funny that when it was Black Lives Matter, they got all the blame for the bombing. I mean, for any kind of fires, any kind of looting. But when it came to them, all of a sudden it's somebody else. You know, call it what you want to call it. But I think that when I saw that Capitol hearing, everybody's pointing fingers at each other. I wonder what intelligence you had for Black Lives Matter when you had National Guard troops guarding the Lincoln Memorial. I wonder what intelligence you had that was credible enough to put people who are in wheelchairs fighting for health care and put them out in zip ties. But for some odd reason, folks who can bring a noose, who didn't stop at the Home Depot, because I've been down in Washington, D.C., I don't know where the nearest Home Depot is at, but somebody came with some lumber to make a noose. And it's just, I think we need to stop being gentlemen and, you know, and just feel like we need to put these legislators on trial, because they are truly just being ridiculous. They you know, there's nothing honorable about what they're doing.
No.
So I hope
you're absolutely right. And you know what, and Lamar, to your other point too, is that I understand, like, you know, for at certain moments, you do need to negotiate. You do need a level of compromise in order to get certain pieces of legislation done. You need that bipartisanship. But on emergency matters like passing a pandemic relief bill or an attack on the seat of U.S. government, bipartisanship doesn't apply here. It's like those are urgent emergency situations where bipartisanship does not apply. And you just have to pick that hill, and you got to stand on it.
You know, like, no, when they had that tax break for the rich, they wasn't asking for no Democrats' help.
That's true.
So you know,
they just passed it through. They pushed it through.
Yeah, they just had one member more, and they run shop. So I think that, you know, Democrats, I'm putting in their ballpark. They need to stop playing soft. So that's what they're looking.
And they didn't ask the wealthy and those corporations they were given a tax cut to. They didn't ask them for they didn't mandate that they have a work requirement, right?
Nope.
So, yeah, you know, it's like when you know, just to give stimulus checks to, or you want to give, you know, right now you've got some Republican senators they're rejecting, they're pushing back against the notion of relief payments or federal assistance, direct payments to parents and children. They're feeling like there should be a work requirement attached to that. That they're saying if it's not a work requirement attached to that, then it's welfare. Okay, well, you know, same thing applies to tax cuts. And look who benefited from the tax cuts, you know, from the 2017 tax cuts that were pushed through Congress when Republicans had a trifecta. We weren't demanding a work requirement then, didn't demand a work requirement back in 2009, right? Remember with the TARP Act? That was $700 billion in, like, immediate federal emergency relief that went to the banks. And, you know, the banks put on the show saying, oh, yeah, you know, we're gonna help people with their mortgages. No, that went to the banks. Didn't ask the banks for a work requirement. They certainly didn't ask the banks for a work requirement last year for $500 billion in CARES Act money. So that was money that
yeah,
received for them, so they could, direct payments to keep their businesses afloat.
And even with the whole Texas situation, I don't hear none of those Republicans talking about a government not running their budget right and can't feed their people. We're not going to send no money to no other state because they can't seem to handle their own disasters.
Right.
It's just the rake of hypocrisy is just getting sickening now. I don't want to hear the excuses of that's just politics. I think it's just the sky is red, the sky is blue. So whatever you want to believe at that particular time, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So
thanks so much for those. I gotta let you go, but no, thanks so much for that. I appreciate that. Raw reminders that we must keep in mind. Lamar in New Jersey. Thanks for listening in, and thanks for calling in too, Mr. Rick. Please take care out there in Germany. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, I'm told I am supposed to speak to Philadelphia Public School Superintendent Dr. William Haidt. He is scheduled to join us next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know you can use LIHEAP to pay your PICO bill? Last year, PICO customers received almost $17 million in free LIHEAP support. This year, take advantage. This deal is first come, first served. Apply now. Call 800-34-HELP-4.
Okay, Her's new fire potato chips and cheese curls, they are spicy. Whew, they're hottest snacks yet. Hold on. Whew. But it's not just heat. There's some nice sweet and savory stuff going on too. Ooh, there's that heat again. It burns, but it burns so tasty. Ooh, that's hot. Find Her's Fire Snacks at your store today. Whew. Taste the flavor, feel the heat, break out the Her's.
WURD Radio celebrates Black History Month with Black Artist Story 365. Brought to you by Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of Tony Award-winning actress and singer and Philly home diva, Pearl Bailey. Auntie Pearl Bailey was born in Newport News, Virginia, to the Reverend Joseph James and Ella Mae Ricks Bailey. She graduated from Booker T. Washington High School in nearby Norfolk, Virginia, and decided to pursue a career in entertainment. She began by singing and dancing in Philadelphia's black nightclubs in the 1930s and soon started performing in other parts of the East Coast. She settled in New York City. She performed with famous folk like Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington. In 1946, she made her Broadway debut in St. Louis Woman. She was in a whole bunch of films too, honey, including the iconic Carmen Jones, starring Academy Award nominee Dorothy Dandridge. If you recall, Auntie Pearl played Carmen's friend, Frankie.
Tell you why I wanna dance. It ain't the sweetness in the music. I like the sweetness in the music. But that ain't why I wanna dance.
In 1967, Bailey and Cab Calloway headlined an all-black cast version of Hello Dolly. The touring version was so successful, producer David Merrick took it to Broadway, where it played to sold-out houses and revitalized the long-running musical. Bailey was given a special Tony Award for her role, and RCA Victor made a second original cast album.
All those lights over there seem to be telling me where I'm going. When the whistles blow and the cymbals crash and the sparklers light the sky, I'm gonna raise the roof, I'm gonna carry on. Give me that old trombone, give me that old baton for the parade passing by.
So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune in to The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
Black Artist Story 365 was brought to you by Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School and the Pennsylvania Lottery. Get to winning with Win, 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 the new scratch-off from the Pennsylvania Lottery, with top prizes of $500,000. Players must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly. Benefits older Pennsylvanians every day. Words from our past. WURD Radio celebrates the powerful voices of Black history. Reverend Dr. Leon H. Sullivan.
If there is anything in earth that makes man akin to God, It is his power to believe. For things are to us what they are on the basis of what we believe them to be, whether they be true or whether they be false. If, for example, you believe that a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, then for you this is true in spite of the fact that there is no such thing as a straight line in a crooked world.
Words from our past, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. This episode brought to you by Comcast.
Hey folks, WURD members are invited to tune in every second Tuesday of the month with me, Nick, for a chance to win a book bundle of the newest releases from Kensington Publishing's culturally oriented Dafina imprint.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We are scheduled to talk with Philadelphia Public School Superintendent Dr. William Hite. He is scheduled to join us. Hopefully we'll reach him on the phone in a few moments or so. We're waiting right now. For more on the Philadelphia Public School System, you should be regularly, particularly if you have a young person who attends the Philadelphia Public School System, philasd.org, philasd.org. For more there. Also, Dr. Hite is at SDP Hite, SDP Hite on Twitter, on social media, if you'd like to see what he's up to there. As we wait on him, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Obviously, a number of things to talk about with respect to the school system, particularly with the school system right now, the superintendent deciding, along with just the city overall, deciding that they're going to delay an initial phase 1 reopening of schools. That was supposed to have happened about a couple of days ago on Monday, on February 22nd. Now that has been pushed back to, or pushed up to March 1st. March 1st is when we will see the reopening of certain schools in Philadelphia, and for a little bit over 9,000 students, but there are still some tensions, still some negotiations that are happening between the Philadelphia Public Schools and also the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. So we're just waiting right now. We have questions, obviously, about that and about the level of preparation from the school district, from the Philadelphia School District. If they are letting young people back into schools, how prepared are they? It's not as simple as reopening the schools. There's a lot of preparation involved, and the Centers for the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, federal CDC, has a number of guidelines that school districts must meet in order to reopen schools. There's a number of guidelines that have been laid out, and they're fairly comprehensive guidelines that have been laid out to ensure that schools are reopening safely. So there's a lot of questions there. Obviously, want to see and examine how prepared the Philadelphia school system is for that. While we wait, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Just waiting on the superintendent right now. 215, but we'll keep, oh, he is on. Okay, we do have him by phone. Once again, Philadelphia School Superintendent Dr. William Hite now joins us by phone. Go to philasd.org for more there, and at SDP Hite on Twitter. He joins us by phone now. Superintendent, good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Ellison. How are you doing? I'm fine. Thank you for I think it's Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning, yes, sir, it is. All right. Appreciate you you joining us now. So I appreciate this conversation. And I know you've got a lot happening, a lot going on. We'll try not to take up too much of your time this morning. Everyone's seeing it in the news, these ongoing tensions between you and the Teachers Union, Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. You're confident about meeting that March 1 deadline?
I'm confident that we will. I'm confident that working with the PFT, we're going to be able to work out a schedule to get children back into schools. And we are trying to work through mediation right now. We had a memorandum of agreement, and there's some disagreement on whether or not the district has met all the components of that. We think we have. They don't think so, and instead of like fighting about it, we are trying to problem solve it to get children back in the schools as quickly as possible. So yeah, I'm still confident that we will have some children back into schools on Monday.
A lot of emphasis has been on the ventilation in the schools, but there are a lot of other issues that you've got to resolve with respect to buildings that have been shut down for a long time, and buildings, particularly Philadelphia school buildings, that are quite old. So one, I mean, are you confident about the ventilation systems and kind of meeting the demands, the understandable demands of folks who have concerns about those ventilation systems? But I mean, these were sick buildings before the pandemic. I mean, you had been dealing with issues and having to shut down schools before pandemic due to toxicity and things like asbestos and lead in these schools. Have you resolved those issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Charles, that's a really good point. I mean, I think that, one, we have done a lot of work since individuals have been out of the buildings. And probably a month after we went out in March, on March 13th of last year, we actually reopened buildings. And so we've had thousands of employees in buildings doing work in buildings. We've spent about $250 million now to safeguard the health and well-being of students and teachers when they return to schools. And so we've done a lot of work with addressing lead in buildings. We have now well over 120 buildings that are now certified lead safe. We added another 32 buildings to that list. We have removed thousands of square footage of asbestos-containing materials. And we've been utilizing this time to really get into buildings to do some of the environmental work that actually can't be done when buildings are occupied. So it's given us the ability to do a lot of work since buildings have been closed. But to your question about ventilation, yes, we've done an analysis of ventilation, and we have now, it started as 32 schools. That number is now down, I think, to 22 or 24 schools. So we don't have operating ventilation systems, and so we had to take other precautions to make sure air was moving.
And Superintendent, what about the plumbing and because that's a problem with any building that's been shut down or that's been unused for a long time. You've got to flush out the water systems. We've had very inadequate water and plumbing systems in Philadelphia schools. I remember when I was in Philadelphia public schools, there were like inadequate bathrooms and plumbing systems, and you still had those issues. Now, have you, to prevent the spread of things like Legionnaire's disease, lead in water, have those been flushed out? Are you meeting those CDC guidelines on that?
Yeah, so several years ago, I appreciate that question, because several years ago we were going through a series of water testing, and there was for lead in the water. And one thing that we decided to do at every school was replace all of the drinking fountains and areas where sinks were being used for meal preparation and things like that with filtered hydration stations. And so now we have filtered hydration stations in every school and multiple stations, not just one. They're on each hallway and in cafeterias. And we have now cut off the spouts on those hydration stations, so that the only thing that can be used on those are the touchless components of those stations, so that students don't have to touch them now with the pandemic. They can just refill bottles with cold filtered water.
The other thing too, I'm wondering, a lot of these changes, a lot of the repairs or rehabilitation you have to do for schools, and I'm wondering, I'm just seeing this coming across the wire today. Congressman Brendan Boyle, who sits on the House Budget Committee in Congress, is announcing that Philadelphia is going to receive quite a bit of pandemic relief money, in fact, about $1.3 billion to offset budget deficits caused by a pandemic. There's money going to SEPTA, to the airport, Northeast Philly Airport. Now there's about $13 billion going to the state, to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and about $5.3 billion is being set aside for K through 12 funding. Philadelphia is obviously the largest school system in Pennsylvania, and so have you been in conversations with folks like Congressman Boyle or with state officials about making sure Philly gets the bulk of that money against the, I would say fairly so, the majority of that money being the largest school system, to make sure you can meet the demands for reopening these schools safely?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really important point, and I think that's one thing that we want everyone to understand, that to your point, Mrs. Ellison, we should actually be getting about 20% of that based on the funding formula that the state actually created, I think, several years ago. Now, the trick is making sure that those monies actually come through that formula. And the CARES funding that came out in the fall, most of those monies were spent using the formula, but the state then set aside an amount of money, like $100 million, but then they distributed that money very differently, where every school district got an equal amount on a per pupil basis, which is not the funding formula. And so we actually we should have received $29 million more than we did, based on what the funding formula says. So if those monies come through the funding formula, we should receive about 20% of that, which, to your point, is a significant amount. And yes, we've been working with the delegation in Washington, the delegation here in Pennsylvania, and at the city level to ensure and encourage individuals to support the monies that President Biden is talking about with this latest stimulus package.
I have to ask you, Superintendent, kind of transitioning, switching on issues here. I get really concerned, and I know a lot of other people out there get really concerned about the school district's scorecard when it comes to academic performance. When you started in 2012, math proficiency for Philadelphia 4th to 8th graders was 47%. Last I checked, or last school year where you gathered data on this, it was 22%. And for English language arts reading proficiency, it went from 42% when you started, now it's down to 36% for reading proficiency as of the last report, compared to the statewide, I think it's like 64% reading proficiency. How do you account for that? How are you all working on that? That's really glaring and alarming.
Yeah, that is glaring and alarming, and we have a lot of work to do there. But I think one thing that's also important is I want people to remember what was happening in 11 and 12. And that was, I think, the last year that the state was using an assessment approach. And then after that year, I think many individuals will recall that there were allegations of cheating that happened, particularly in the city of Philadelphia and other urban areas as well. And they actually then created a new structure or new administration of the Pennsylvania state assessments. And that next year, Charles, I think the literacy scores dropped significantly based on, number one, the new assessment and the new administration of those assessments. And so from that point, we have seen gains from that point. But that 11-12 year was the year where there were allegations of widespread cheating, and I can't speak to that other than because I wasn't here then, but I can only speak to what we were dealing with when I arrived based on those allegations, and so we did see a significant fall from 11-12, I think, to 12-13, and then it may have continued to fall in 13-14, and then we've been increasing from that point forward. And I would be the first one to say we still have a lot of work to do in that space, but nonetheless, we have seen annual increases on the literacy rates for our young people. We haven't seen as much in the math space, but two reasons for that. One, we were focused primarily on early literacy, particularly when we were going through the budget shortfalls and thought it was really important to make sure we were focusing on teaching children to read. And now we are beginning to also focus on math because that's equally important.
What is that plan? What's that? So I would think to respond to something like that, that sort of that glaring data, and I'm glad you're aware of it. That's a, I appreciate that background too. But is there like some, I don't know, very urgent kind of crack response plan, like a 100-day plan to increase literacy in the city? Because you've also got an adult population in the city. Over a quarter of adults in Philadelphia are illiterate. And then we have this violence situation. There is a direct correlation between illiteracy and high rates of violence, and also high rates of incarceration. So to me, that's like a state of educational emergency in the city. Do you have like an ambitious or bold plan to address that?
Yeah, I mean, it's why we actually focused on early literacy from the start. And we saw those literacy rates go from the teens to the high 30s. I think we're at 37% right now on that. But as I indicated before, we still have a lot of work to do. And I think the Board of Education has taken a significant step in making sure that we continue our focus on both literacy and math. So a couple of things we've done. We have now trained individuals on how to teach reading, Charles, because surprisingly, individuals may come out of a college with a degree in education and have never been taught the fundamentals of teaching reading. And so we've actually worked with the colleges and universities to change their approach to educating individuals to teach reading. Second, we have now put a new curriculum in place. And that new curriculum is to ensure that regardless of where children live in the city of Philadelphia, they're having access to grade level content material, which is so critically important. Because, you know, if I'm an English language learner, or I'm a child with special needs, or I'm a student who may be a couple of years behind, we will never get them caught up if, in fact, we're just giving them first grade material. So they actually have to have grade level material with the appropriate modifications, accommodations to actually learn that material. And so we're doing that work, but doing a lot of training in that space.
I'm real curious, too, before I let you go, Superintendent, got about a minute left. Are you working direct? Okay, so we got this violence crisis in the city, and, once again, there's that correlation between, problems with literacy, high incarceration, high violence. Are you working directly with, departments like Philadelphia Police, with the district attorney's office, finding creative, innovative ways in which you can tackle this violence problem through expanding educational, K through 12 educational opportunities, and also increasing literacy? Have you all had those conversations?
Excellent question. Yep, we're on the task force we're on multiple task force, the gun violence task force, but we're also working with the DA, the mayor's office, the council, city council, the police department, and the school districts, and all of their behavioral health providers. And so we now have behavioral health counselors in every school, Charles, and one of the reasons we wanted to do that was to teach young people how to come up with other ways to resolve conflict than just through violence. And we're doing that through something called positive behavior intervention, restorative practices, conflict resolution training, and we're doing all of that. And I would also add that it's easier it's more effective to do that when you have children in person, because you can see their responses, their reactions, and you can pull them to the side if, in fact, you see that they're agitated or angry. And we don't have that same ability to do that in a virtual environment. And so it's just another reason why it's so critically important that we start getting children back into schools as quickly and as safely as we can.
We've been talking with Philadelphia Schools Superintendent Dr. William Height. Go to philasd.org for the school district's website. Also, he is at SDP Height. Superintendent, really appreciate this conversation. So I hope you're not a stranger. I hope we can, every now and then, we can bring you on some good conversation there and some good bits of information. I know we got to let you go. We had you for a limited time here, but I'm hoping that you'll come back.
Charles, really appreciate it. I'll be glad to come back anytime you need me.
All right. I appreciate that, sir. Thanks again. All right. Be safe out there. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we will take questions or comments or feedback in an open line session. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. And we go into the 11 o'clock hour. 11 o'clock hour, also we're talking with Tom Bowman is coming up to discuss practical solutions on responding to climate crisis. So that should be an interesting discussion. And Scott Seaborg with All Voting is Local Pennsylvania is talking about the threat to voting rights, especially in the Pennsylvania legislature and other states as well. So let's take a break. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll be right back.
Well, the kids are in bed. Time for a little grown-up quiet time.
What do you mean quiet time? It's your birthday. We're about to party.
Haha, funny. It's gonna have to be a you and me party this year. You know we can't have anybody over.
Well, your mom and dad are coming from Florida. Sis will be here from California. Oh, and a couple of old friends from just about everywhere will be showing up. They should all be here about now.
COVID-19 has changed the way we do things, for now. But social distancing doesn't mean you can't be social. COVID-19 doesn't have to keep us apart. Friends and family are finding new ways to be together, especially with how hard it's hitting the Black community. Vaccines are here, but until enough of us are vaccinated, we still have to be down with slowing the spread. Keep a 6-foot distance, wear a mask, and avoid indoor social gatherings. Learn more about vaccines and slowing the spread at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
WURD Radio is independent Black media, and we're able to stay independent because of our 4WURD movement and members like you.
Treat yourself to the treat of buying a WURD membership. It's less than a quarter a day. That's less than a bag of chips. And we really, truly need to keep this platform going so that we can stay connected as we reimagine our community in 2021.
Start or renew your 4WURD membership today at wordradio.com/4WURD or call 215-425-7875. WURD Radio. Independent Black media. Words from our past. WURD Radio celebrates the powerful voices of Black history. Malcolm X.
We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us is come together against the common enemy.
Words from our past, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. So yeah, you did hear that correct. We getting word from Congressman Brendan Boyle. You'll probably be hearing from other members of the Philadelphia area delegation to Congress. He is vice chairman of the House Budget Committee, and there is a full vote on the pandemic relief bill that is taking place in the House. That's probably going to take place either Friday in a couple of days or Saturday, and then it's going to move to the Senate. And pandemic relief, that $1.9 trillion coronavirus stimulus bill, is expected to pass before mid-March. And at that time, March 14th is when extended unemployment benefits expire or expected to expire. So by the time they expire, you'll have this new $2 trillion stimulus bill in place. But Boyle is saying that at least based on the bill that is passing through or expected to pass through the House, there will be $1.3 billion to Philadelphia to offset budget deficits that have been caused by pandemic. So already you've got the city facing a $450 million budget deficit. So looks like they're getting a little bit more to, one, take care of the $450 million budget deficit, and then also maybe take care of some city operations moving forward, maybe to kind of carry it for a year. $914 million in transit funding. So the lion's share of that going to SEPTA, $115 million for Philadelphia International Airport, and $148,000 for Northeast Philly Airport. Maurice out of Southwest is calling in for a reality check.
You know Southwest, man. Get it right.
What's up?
Hey, listen, man. Did you see Judas and the Messiah?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Well, I'm not going to tell you about it, but I advise you to watch that. And we know, all I got to say about this right here is we already know who Judas is. Now, listen, how do you take an interview without phone calls? You know what I'm saying? Because we have our own questions.
Yeah, but Maurice, I've only got a limited. This is the first time I've had the superintendent, and it took a long time to get him. It took a long time to get him, and I made that decision. That was my call. I made that decision. I had a number of questions for him. I had limited time. It's nothing against you. It's nothing against anybody else out there. I already knew what I was going to ask him. We've already had this open conversation. For a long time, the superintendent had avoided coming on the program. Finally came on the program. He just promised on air he's going to come back. And when he comes back, that's when we can, we'll talk. We'll have like him. We'll open up the phone lines. But I had to make that judgment call, man. I mean, I was limited on time. He's limited on time. It was just a time issue.
I'm past that, Charles. I'm past that. I'm going to moving on. Listen, he had the nerve to say task force. Now, we all know the city has no task force. So when he said that he was involved in all these task forces, where was that coming from? Out the back of his ear?
I need to look into that. When I heard that, that's something I need to look into.
You know it's not happening. Come on, let's deal with the truth. That's all I'm saying. I don't have nothing against Mr. Height. I'm just saying, just come on and tell us that we got problems that he's trying to solve them, but don't blow smoke off of us and tell us that he's working with task forces when we don't have one.
I hear you. I mean, or if it's something, if there's something that maybe, so sometimes you'll have public task forces, and then sometimes these cities operate with like non-public task forces, or they're meeting like in a multi-agency effort, and it's just something they coordinate on a regular basis every day, but the public doesn't know about. I need to explore that. I need to is there something is there a coordination happening among all these different agencies that we're just not aware of, that we're not privy to? So I need to find out. And maybe that's what he's talking about in his mind. That's a task force.
I wouldn't waste my time with that. But here's the thing. Any man that puts Walmart fans in windows and say he irrigated the place for small children is crazy. And plus, we all know, why would you send an elderly school teacher in there with kids who are the dirtiest in the world? The most cleanest kid is dirty when he's playing in school. Put them in there without them getting their shots first. And we all know when you don't get your shots and everything is right, how you can lose somebody. We all felt that, and I ain't got to say why. So when you had this insane man come on there and propagate nonsense, I'm just calling it what it is. I won't leave you alone, Charles, because you're doing a great job.
I hear you. And that the pressure's on right now. I had a very fine night. I appreciate you pointing that out, Maurice. I do. I know some folks that wish they had that moment to call in and ask Dr. Height questions. We had very limited time. First of all, I came on late. Then I already had limited time with him. I had a bunch of questions I wanted to ask him. I didn't want to get too I was very intentional about this. I didn't want to get too bogged down and spend the entire, because you could actually do that, spend the entire interview just talking about the school reopening debate. Because there's other really big important issues like illiteracy in the city. That's something that's really important to all of us. It's very important to me. And I haven't heard any questions asked about that, like the state of the Philadelphia school system before pandemic and how that state of dysfunction is still very prevalent right now through pandemic, and is probably still going to be there after pandemic. So, I'm hoping that this is the start, based on his commitment to come here occasionally on this program to answer questions. I'm hoping that this is the start of a prolonged conversation between this program and him about those deep structural issues that are affecting the Philadelphia public school system. So, I made that call. I was like, hey, it was just time. I'm not trying to hide. It wasn't any nefarious attempt to hide the superintendent or to shield him from callers or from listeners. It really was just my decision I wanted time with him because it's the first time I've had him on. And we've talked quite a bit about having the superintendent on, and we finally got him. So now I want to continue that and make that, make him more accessible to this program and ask him those structural questions, because those are, and get that information out there to see, okay, well, what's on his mind with respect to these real challenging, pressing issues? What's his perspective on that? What's on his mind? What's he planning to do? I just want to know, what are these folks planning on doing? It's not. I don't really, and I don't relish in bringing different folks on just to call them out. What I relish in is, okay, we bring them on, we ask them pointed questions, and they tell us, oh yeah, you know what, we're thinking about that, and we have plan X, plan A, plan B, X, Y, and Z for this. Okay, well, tell us about the plan, or what can we do to help you with the plan? That's obviously it's an extended conversation, and so I'm looking forward to having them back. Also, don't forget, go to wordradio.com/join now in this final week of Black History Month. Help us, help all of us, help us at WURD continue to make and support Black history. One thing that always strikes me, I was thinking about this the other day, it has become increasingly hard for me personally. I don't know about everyone else out there. It has become increasingly difficult for me to celebrate Black History Month when I know that we've seen not much improvement in the collective Black condition. The whole purpose of Black History Month, when Carter G. Woodson created what is now Black History Month, he created to substantially improve the condition of Black people. And I'm not seeing big improvements in the condition of Black people. Certain indicators, I'm seeing worsening conditions. So it fills me with pride to be on this outlet every day and an institution that strives towards improving the collective condition of Black people each and every day. That's Black history, right? And so we do that. Go to wordradio.com/join now and to support that and to be a part of that movement, to be a part of this institution and to help build it up and make it even better. Support it as a 4WURD member, $90 a year, wordradio.com/join now. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to talk with Tom Bowman. He's the author of What If Solving the Climate Crisis is Simple? So let's see how simple it is. I'm just curious about that. So that's his book. He's coming up next. We'll have an EcoWord segment here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Attention WURD audience, do you know that you can get help with your PICO energy bill? PICO is here to help you with financial help through various assistance programs, including the PICO CAP program, which provides a monthly credit for eligible low-income customers based on the customer's total household gross income and energy usage. If you are experiencing financial hardship, you may qualify for the PICO CAP program.
And PICO Cares is the customer assistance and referral evaluation service designed to assist special needs, low-income customers who have a temporary personal or financial hardship that prevents the payment of your PICO energy bill. If you have a special needs child or adult in your care, your household may qualify for the CARES program.
Call 1-800-774-7040 today to see if you qualify due to an existing situation or a change in circumstances within your household. Call 1-800-774-7040 today for more information on the PICO CAP or PICO CARES program. PICO, powering our communities.
Tune in this Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. for the Islam Today show with a perspective on moral guidance and Islamic principles and values.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. Celebrating Black history all year long. Fannie Lou Hamer.
We are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Philadelphia, independent Black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're joined now by Tom Bowman. He is author of What If Solving the Climate Crisis is Simple. Go to resettingourfuture.com. Tom Bowman is an expert on the climate crisis that we're going through right now. And he's also co-written with his colleague, Deb Morrison, an ACE National Strategic Planning Framework for the U.S. as in response to climate change, and he's co-editor of Resetting Our Future: Empowering Climate Action in the U.S. Tom Bowman joins us by Skype here on WURD TV and WURD Radio as well. Headed into an eco-WURD discussion segment with him. Tom, how are you doing? Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, solving the climate crisis, it's really much more simple than we think it is. So tell us about that. Expound on that a little bit more. So, because it seems like a very complex, it's definitely at an alarming level right now. We're seeing, for example, what's unfolding in places like Texas, what unfolded in places like California last year. And so it seems like it is a nearly impossible catastrophe to fix. But you feel like it's fairly simple. Tell us about it.
Well, I come at this from a perspective of why is it that most people feel dispirited about solving the climate crisis? Why are so few people really active in solving the climate crisis? There's kind of a feeling of despair that pervades, and the surveys show it. And when I asked that question and explored it, it occurred to me that most of what we've learned about the climate crisis comes from scientists who study very complex systems. The climate system itself is very complex, but they also have taught us that solving the climate crisis requires massive changes to extremely complex human systems too, like urban planning and global transportation and food production and supply chains and finance. And when you think of it in those terms, none of us feel like we have the capacity to do much about it because those systems are big and we feel very small. But that's only an interpretation. And if we try setting that interpretation aside, we discover instead that there's really only one thing that we have to do, and that is to stop burning fossil fuels and do it well before mid-century. And of course, we don't want to fail in doing it. When we phrase it in those terms, it opens this problem up to every organization and institution and local government and community group, because we can all do the things we do while using less fossil fuel. And it allows us to start changing the dynamics in our society between people to support productive action on climate change.
In reducing fossil fuel consumption, and now that simplifies the issue. It makes it much more, in terms of the solutions, it makes those solutions much more practical. Okay, so it's us as a human community, as a major stakeholder in this. But what are those institutions? How about those institutions? The fossil fuel industry itself, right? Also, right. Those other industries like car makers and folks who make airplanes and or make those types of technologies that use fossil fuels. Is it as simple for them?
Parts of it are and parts of it are not. But we've already seen that Ford has announced it's going to shift in Europe to 100% electric vehicles within something like 5 or 7 years. And GM announced that they will go all electric by 2035. So there are some trends that are going in the right direction that we tend to not see when we think about the big picture. But when we start thinking of it in this terms, we start really paying attention to the rapid drop in costs for renewable energy compared to fossil fuels, and the shifts that businesses are making away from a fossil fuel economy. And we can see those as hopeful signs and signs of progress, rather than thinking of them as only idiosyncratic, one-off kind of steps. We can start to see the trends.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because I think that when you start making that very hard, somewhat binary comparison, right, between the old fossil fuel economy and the new clean energy economy, and we're realistic about it, also we show everyone the value proposition, the economic value proposition, right? Like with the old school fossil fuel economy, actually when you look at that fossil fuel industry or sector, and also like coal mining, that's hemorrhaging jobs right now. But the clean energy sector, especially before pandemic, everyone's been losing jobs. But before pandemic, actually clean energy sector was seeing a very significant increase in the number of jobs being developed. It was outpacing the fossil fuel energy. And I think when you make it very plain and simple in those terms, people start to get it. It clicks. It's like, wow, you know what? We need to go in this direction because this is, we're going to clean the planet. We're going to save it. But, at the same time, I can potentially make more money. My community can make more money. I can enhance my economy.
That's exactly right. Even in the Great Recession in 2010, 2012, here in California where I live, our whole economy was down like everywhere else in the country. We had hemorrhaged jobs, but the green jobs sector was growing. It was the one bright spot. So there is a huge trend that way. And I'd also say that when we abandon fossil fuels, we also improve our health immediately. There's been research that shows this because we reduce air pollution, and that means we reduce respiratory disease, asthma in children, lost days of work. And so the benefits are huge.
Yeah, yeah. I've always said that too when I've had, and I have these discussions near daily on this program about climate crisis, about how we need to shift now immediately and dramatically towards our reliance on fossil fuels and solving this climate crisis situation we find ourselves in. But you're right. I mean, a lot of these debates, a lot of these conversations, the dialogue, particularly in the mainstream discourse, it can be very sophisticated and it could go above people's heads. You tackle that in your book and a lot of your other writings. For example, the Keystone XL pipeline controversy. Let's take that, for example. I'm not so sure. Yeah, it's an important issue, and it's important definitely, especially to those on-the-ground communities, especially indigenous communities that are being directly impacted by that kind of activity. We should pay attention to it. It is important. But framing it as sort of ground zero for this larger conversation about pollution, climate crisis, environmental justice, it's very complex. It's hard for a lot of other average folks out there who are dealing with issues and problems of their own in their own households to wrap their heads around it. It's not. I don't know if issues like that or fracking are actually that relatable for the larger American psyche to understand that this is a pressing issue that we need to get on now, that we all need to collectively do something about.
Yeah, I mean, there are events like the Keystone Pipeline that are like lightning rod kind of moments, right? Because there are multiple questions in there. One is, are we really going to invest billions more dollars in fossil fuel economy? Are we going to try to grow that part of the economy? Or are we turning our back on that and going in a cleaner way? The other reason it's a lightning rod issue is that it's a continuation of the stripping of rights of indigenous communities, right? The people on the ground, largely indigenous communities, who suffer the horror of oil spills and that kind of thing. Are we really going to continue down that path at this time in our history? And I think that's why those things pop up as becoming kind of the central focus around an issue. But the underlying public support that is making it a lightning rod issue is really important, and it's abiding. People really want to live in a healthier, cleaner, more just society.
Yeah, yeah. We're talking with Tom Bowman. He's also known as the Common Sense Climate Guy. So for more information on him, go to resettingourfuture.com. He's the author of What If Solving the Climate Crisis is Simple? He's joining us here for an EcoWord conversation. And I'm quite enjoying it. And I think Tom and I are on the same wavelength about a number of things with respect to tackling climate change, climate crisis. Tom, really, especially when we look at the situation in Texas, and I was talking to someone out in Austin we had on yesterday, political strategists, and talking about what that political conversation is like and what the future could look like for Texas. Is it going to be really that simple, or do you think people are going to start getting it when they see these types of calamities and feeling like, because, initially when everything went down in Texas, you had folks like Governor Greg Abbott, Senator Ted Cruz, and others who were saying, you know what, this was not us, this was not the fossil fuel industry, and the fact we didn't weatherize these natural gas pipes, it was these wind turbines that fell apart. But then we find out that it's not. Do you think that clean energy, solar, wind, other forms of renewable clean energy can really fill the void, as we remove our reliance on fossil fuels?
The experts tell us that they can, but there's another component in it that I think is overlooked, and that is energy efficiency. We waste an incredible amount of energy, and we pay for it, and we take it for granted because we don't really see it. When I decided to decarbonize the company that I used to own, I set really ambitious goals, and we reduced our carbon footprint by 2/3 in just 15 months and saved $9,000 a year doing it. And all we did was eliminate waste. and nobody's lifestyle changed. That just tells us that there's a huge percentage of the energy demand that we take for granted it's really just going for nothing. So if we combine renewables and energy efficiency in a big way, we have incredible potential to make rapid progress. But I'd also say it's kind of unhelpful to think that we have to have a 100% solution in our minds today. Because as we pursue progress and productive technologies and productive business practices, it creates new opportunities that we don't see yet. And those opportunities will carry us the next 50 yards down the field, and the opportunities that those things create will carry us even further down the field. So it's okay to not know how we get to 100% carbon reduction today. We can get to 50%, 60, 70% very quickly, probably.
Yeah, and it's about having confidence in our ability to innovate. I remember reading some time ago, this was like several years ago, George Friedman, he's in Texas, has this intelligence assessment agency like the CIA contracts from Stratford, you probably heard of it. And he wrote this book called The Next 100 Years. And so looking, into the future throughout the rest of the 21st century, and climate change obviously comes up as a major global security threat. He was very optimistic about solving that problem because he's like, at the end of the day, societies, particularly, he focused, much more deliberately on the United States, but we have a way to innovate our way out of certain crises, right? And so he's like, the technology, the innovations will be there. I never thought about energy efficiency, but that is an innovation. If we can get to that point where we stop being as wasteful as we are as a human society.
Right, and the great thing about that is that it's accessible to everyone. Right? We can all drive less. We can all drive a more efficient car when we can afford to buy a new car, and then we can try to park it. We're already seeing remember when COVID struck in almost a year ago now, in March, and everybody suddenly stayed home, and we were all concentrated on flattening the curve. As dark and as horrifying as that was, did you notice that the skies over major cities cleaned up? Right? Here in Los Angeles area, the skies were clear, the streets were quiet, and that was a wonderful sign. And we've since learned that businesses don't want all their employees coming back, employees who have worked at home. And something like 69% last August of the people who were lucky enough to work at home said they didn't want to go back to the office. So here's a major process change available to us that reduces emissions that we never would have thought of on our own.
What about those, the segments of the population that still don't believe that climate crisis is real, right? And so, like, I had an open phone line segment just yesterday, and someone called in and like, this climate hoax stuff, we're like overreacting. So you have that. You have the folks who are aligned politically with people like Trump. Folks who, and it's funny, right? You have, like, let's say, conservative Republican voters who are really kind of natural conservationists. They love to go out to hunt and fish and spend time in nature and live, on vast acres of land. It's like, well, how do you think you're going to be able to maintain that or to keep that land protected? You're going to have to do something about pollution and climate crisis. How do you reach out to those? How do you convert or persuade those very hard-headed, stubborn, obstinate pockets of the population that still don't believe this is a problem?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we always assume that we need to change a person's mind when we're talking with them, right? Kind of on a one-on-one basis. And that's been a huge focus of the efforts. That's been a kind of a framing for how do we deal with climate change? How do we bring the deniers with us? Well, the deniers have become a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of the population. Their numbers are shrinking. And it's because more and more people are seeing the changing climate around them. They're seeing events like Texas or the wildfires in California, and they're recognizing that the climate is changing, and they're really concerned about it. So the real, I think, productive move is to help the people who are most amenable start taking action and start speaking up about it. Because as we build social support for this kind of mutual support for this kind of talk and of action, we sort of shift the underlying baseline, right, that helps other people come along with it. And I'll just tell you, there's a community in a very small town called Greensburg, Kansas, that was wiped out by a tornado, a little farm town, conservative. They rebuilt as a green city. And they're internationally famous as a green city. And when I talked to one of the city fathers there, I said, you know, here you are adopting these urban left coast values, right, about the environment. He said, no, we're farmers. It's just like you said, taking care of the land is in our blood. We really care about it. They might not talk about it in terms of climate change, but they're doing the right things.
The Biden climate plan, and he's promising, his administration promising to be much more aggressive on climate. You know, it's one of their top 3 issues. But, you know, you have some issues with that. You don't feel as if, you know, he's connecting with the public on it, like really, truly kind of explaining it. Like, this is what I want to do. This is the type of support I need from you as a public to make this happen. Expound on that.
Yeah, I actually see it as an opportunity that they could take advantage of. And this is the Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE, work that you mentioned early on. There is a section of the Paris Climate Agreement that calls on every country to create a national strategy to empower and engage its public in participating in decision-making about climate change and helping to find and implement the solutions. But no major emitting country has created a national strategy yet. And the United States could be the first. And so recognizing this, a really diverse group of people who work in many different aspects of this work got together last year and co-developed a framework for creating a national strategy for the United States that focuses on a couple of really crucial things. One is that it makes the very strong case that climate justice and climate action are really one and the same thing. That unjust approaches to climate change are not going to work as well as empowering everyone to participate and lead. And the second thing is that because of that, it focuses very much on communities and on the knowledge that already exists within communities, so that people are uplifted to participate and to celebrate the benefits that they get from participating in climate action. And so our argument to the Biden administration is to help them see this and embrace it and co-develop this public action agenda with the people who are already doing this work on the ground.
We've been talking with Tom Bowman, the Common Sense Climate Guy, also author of, you should check it out, What If Solving the Climate Crisis is Simple and Empowering Climate Action in the United States. He's co-editor of that, Resetting Our Future, Empowering Climate Action in the United States. Also that framework he was talking about just a moment ago, aceframework.us, the ACE National Strategic Planning Framework for climate change, or for climate change response in the U.S. Resettingourfuture.com for more information there too. Tom Bowman. Definitely hope in the future we can get you back, Tom. We can talk more about this. Really enjoyed the discussion, and thanks so much for your time.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Be safe.
You too.
Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Scott Seaborg. He is he's executive director of All Voting is Local Pennsylvania. Going to talk about voter suppression issues and threats in the Pennsylvania State Legislature and also in other states as well, coming up on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, but WURDradio.com, WURD TV throughout the nation, throughout the world. I'm Charles Ellis, and we'll be right back.
Looking for an exciting and well-paying new career opportunity? MCAP is a free manufacturing career accelerator program. In just 7 weeks, learn new career skills, earn industry certifications, and connect to manufacturing companies who are hiring. To see if MCAP is right for you, call 215-770-7101. That's 215-770-7101. MCAP is brought to you by Drexel University's Goodwin College of Professional Studies in partnership with EDSI Incorporated. MCAP is an equal opportunity program. Diverse candidates, including women and people of color, are strongly encouraged to apply.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time, or even back-to-back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
Hey folks, WURD members are invited to tune in every second Tuesday of the month with me, Nick, for a chance to win a book bundle of the newest releases from Kensington Publishing's culturally oriented Dafina imprint.
Livelihood, WURD Radio's new initiative, connecting Black Philadelphians with jobs, entrepreneurship resources, small business development information, and financial literacy tools. Tune in to WURD Radio for our weekly Livelihood segments in every weekday show. For a full schedule, visit wordradio.com/livelihood. For more information on Livelihood, visit wordworks.com. That's WURDWORKS.com.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Scott Seaborg is Executive Director, Pennsylvania for All Voting is Local. Go to allvotingislocal.org. Is that correct, Scott? I think that's, I hope I have my websites correct. All Voting is Local. All right, allvotingislocal.org for more information. Scott oversees their Pennsylvania efforts. We've had him on before, and we've worked with him, collaborated with him last year to spread the gospel about mail ballot voting. And so it's some pretty successful work, I'm told. So we did quite well last year with that. And I participated in a number of town halls or teletown halls, helping All Voting is Local, really helping the Pennsylvania electorate understand mail ballot voting. And we definitely saw the fruits of that effort last year. So it's good to have Scott back. It's the first time we've had you back since the new year, Scott. So it's really good seeing you. How are you doing?
Hey, every day is a gift, Charles. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So now you're focused on, no rest for the weary, right? And that's what we're dealing with, the situation in Pennsylvania. Let's talk about Pennsylvania. Let's focus on that. Already 14 or 15 bills in the Pennsylvania legislature to suppress the vote, to destroy people's access to the vote, to destroy our right to vote. I mean, there's just no other way of putting it. Talk about those bills, how alarming this threat is, why people should be worried.
We're seeing assaults on voting rights all over the country, right? Yeah. Pennsylvania is actually number 2 for how many proposed voter suppression bills that there are in 2021. And they're really taking, I think, a pernicious approach to this, which is all about getting election integrity hearings scheduled. There's scheduled 12 of these hearings, and it's all about looking at the integrity of the election system here in Pennsylvania. Now, we know all of the sort of issues around, the big lie really never were borne out in courts, right? Every court, even Trump-appointed judges said, look, there's no basis of a claim here. And so we really think that instead of prioritizing our public health and our democracy, these officials are threatening to create efforts that investigate and challenge our votes. And we think these task forces don't intend to really investigate voting problems. I think they're simply there to aim at voters for the silence. They want to silence our voices. And, the gamut of bills that they've introduced run from completely repealing Act 77 and vote by mail, which I believe is HB 25, and then a whole host of other attacks on voting rights, really with no basis in fact or truth.
So just looking at exploring in a very meticulous way every aspect of the voting process that can be compromised. I mean, this is real. There's a lot of energy that goes into this type of work. I mean, it takes a lot, right? I mean, it's a lot of intellectual energy, time, effort, a lot of sweat. I mean, if you're coming from that side and you're like, okay, how can I find some creative ways to hide the vote or keep the vote from people? Okay, I found something else. I mean, really, it takes an inordinate amount of time when you could be, I don't know, focused on things like running the state through a pandemic. But have you had, I'm real curious too, Scott. I mean, have you had conversations with folks in that space, in that arena, voter suppressors, to kind of understand where they're coming from, to see if there's, I don't know, some remote rationale for doing what they do?
You know, we've been paying really close attention to these hearings, and, you know, without having had conversations with anti-voters that are set to tear down our election option for voters, you know, we do know they're saying stuff like voters don't understand whether there's corruption in the process, right? Which I kind of read as, you know, a cyclical, cynical cycle where they're saying there's bad things happening. They're then looking for those bad things, and it's really, you know, a solution in search of a problem here. We don't believe that anything is going to be coming from these hearings that is, you know, much different than the big lie. And look, we're all for looking at our election systems and improving them and expanding access to voters, but that's not the impetus or the thrust of these hearings, I think, at all. And it's really alarming, especially since we had the highest voter turnout in Pennsylvania, you know, in the history of the state. And, you know, some new polling came out today. And this is polling that has been done on all the battleground states from the 2020 elections. And we know that support for early voting and the vote by mail piece, which I think is really what they're going after with these hearings to try to take this piece away from Pennsylvania voters. The support for early voting spans demographic, partisan, and regional lines. 70% of voters in battleground states, including Pennsylvania, support both expanding early voting and keeping early voting locations open on nights and weekends. Like, folks, this stuff. This is not some type of 5-alarm fire where constituents are reaching out and saying, you know, my vote absolutely didn't count and I can show you how that happened. This is just reacting to the big lie that was perpetrated and repeated hundreds and hundreds of times, if not thousands, across these battleground states.
We're joined by Scott Seaborg. He is Pennsylvania Director for All Voting is Local. Go to allvotingislocal.org. And we're partnering up here to bring you this voting rights threat assessment, because that's exactly what it is. We've got 100 and, well, last count, because I know there was a Senate bill, a state Senate bill pulled yesterday in Georgia. And that was just pulled because of concerns coming from the Secretary of State over budgeting for it. But thankfully that was pulled. But so now I think it's like 164 bills in 34 states now, because in Colorado, something's happening in Colorado. Some of my friends out in Colorado just made me aware of a voter destruction bill that's being introduced there. So we got about 160, at least that we know of, 160, but it could be more, 164 bills in 34 states, Pennsylvania included. Pennsylvania is number 2 on that list. 164 bills in 34 states to destroy our vote. So we need this constant voting rights threat assessment. That's how real it is. So we're going to be holding that assessment continually and each week here on WURD, and relying on partners such as All Voting is Local, who did a fantastic job last year in 2020, and they're trying to protect us in 2021, so we need to get on board with that. What do we need to do, Scott? So, you know, this is the awareness component, right? You know, just getting the information out there. Like I'm telling people constantly, like whether I'm on air, I'm on Twitter, I'm having conversations with folks. Hey, y'all, 164 bills in 34 states to destroy our right to vote. You know, so people, just a cadence, a rhythm, so people can like, oh my gosh, like, because yeah, it is that real. It is that alarming. But okay, the awareness component is one. How can people get activated here? So like, these bills are plentiful. They're everywhere. Like, so for example, how can people get just basic information on, okay, well, what are those bills? Like, what do I need to know about?
Well, I think one of the pieces that is developing is our experience right here and our collaboration together. I'm really excited to get that information out. You know, I'll start by saying anybody who's a registered voter in Pennsylvania can apply to be on the vote by mail permanent list for this year right now. There's kind of a strange language piece where a permanent sign up for the vote by mail system is only active for 1 year. So folks, if you want to go and vote by mail in the primary, which you absolutely should if that's your inclination, or the general, go ahead and go to votespa.com and sign up as a vote by mail voter, and you'll be set for the primary and the general. And I think that, local media is beginning to really wake up to the threat around these voting attacks and these attacks in the legislature. Contacting your legislator is always a good idea. And, there's another piece here where there's no good reason to suddenly cut the progress that Act 77 delivered, risking widespread voter confusion, disenfranchisement, unless these politicians are up to no good, right? And so what can we do as people? Well, All Voting is Local, and Reality Check and WURD are starting up a program to really create a culture of success around Act 77. We know, and I can speak to it personally as a disabled voter, that it was really, really nice to be able to vote my ballot by mail and drop it in a drop box at a time of my choosing. And, that story is an important voice to get out there, not only for these electeds and these politicians in Pennsylvania who are trying to take away our voting options and reduce the amount of options that voters have in the state, but we want to have a story told. We need to tell the story of success here in Pennsylvania. And so one of the ways we're doing that is asking folks to share if you had an experience with voting by mail or voting early. We'd love to hear about it. And we'd love for you to email voter@allvotingislocal.org. And
voter@allvotingislocal.org.
That's right. And if an individual chooses to get in touch with us, we will reach out and talk to folks about how would you like to share your story. Is it a written word type of thing? Do you want to cut a quick Skype video? Do you want to talk to a reporter about it? We need to do our piece to let politicians know these are valuable things. They are important things, and they're extra important for Black and brown voters in Philadelphia and in the rest of the state and in the rest of the country, because we know that that is a historically disenfranchised voting bloc that has less resources in the community and less options to cast ballots. And we absolutely cannot go backwards.
We can't go backwards. And it's just absolutely crucial. How do you also guard against, how do you fight against, Scott, because we all deal with it, right? Election or campaign fatigue. So, because we just came out of really brutal, 2020, I've been through a lot of election cycles, either covering them from a media angle or actually participating in them on the front line as a strategist or as a campaign staffer or advising candidates. And this is the most brutal yet, 2020. So a lot of people are just worn out. And I know that that's even more so the case for voters, just average voters who are not involved in the political space or the campaigns and election space as heavily as a person like I am or you are, right? How do we guard against that? People are like, oh, you know what? We got another election cycle coming up. We just got finished with one, and that was the big one, right? But no, you got like congressional midterms, you got state legislative races coming up in 2022. That's just around the corner.
Absolutely, and it's such a great question. I have to deal with it, in my own heart and make sure my motivation is solid every day when I go to work. And the way I do that is by looking around my community, looking at the newspapers and seeing what's happening in the city of Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania, and our entire country, right? Voting for an elected official isn't a switch you get to flick to get everything that you want. And at the same time, voting for an elected official is putting us on a path to restorative justice, right? The same individuals who want to make sure that there are less voting options in our community also, tend to not want to do things like, give more money to low-income school districts, support food benefits for families who are having a hard time putting food on the table, the housing crisis. All of these pieces, not to mention the increasing gun violence in Philadelphia, all of these pieces are part of the fabric of our democracy. And casting a ballot is the way that you get to say, I'm pushing back against these powerful forces that are spending enormous resources trying to take away my voice, right? And, it should make you mad. The other piece I would say, and I think one of the reasons why it's so caustic out there around the election space is because that's what they want. That's what the anti-voters want. If you don't have a good argument in court, you pound the table and yell. And I think that's the big lie is about, and they're pounding the table. And I think the goal is really to stress people out, make them unplug from the process. And so it's sort of a cognitive change. You have to decide that that's not going to work on you, and you're going to push back. And I think that's my frame.
Yeah, yeah. You know, they wear you out, you know, particularly in the first half, right? I mean, it's like that football game that goes very successfully for one particular team. You know, they wear the opposing team out in that first half. You know, they just completely wear, you know, and we're going into after halftime, wear them out some more in the third quarter. By the time you get to the fourth quarter and you get the red zone, you know, at certain points where it counts, then, you know, your defense is all like, it's just in tatters. So we got to keep that defense up. You know, this is one of those ways of keeping that defense up. And then, you know, at a certain point, as we recover, then you're on the offense to, you know, just eliminate this from ever happening again, or from certain, you know, these types of attacks on our humanity, really, at the end of the day, from happening again. Because that's what it is. When you're taking away a person's voting rights, you're taking away their humanity. You're taking away a community's humanity, collective humanity. And so people just need to understand that. We're talking with Scott Seward. All voting is local, so voter@allvotingislocal.org. People should send in an email, reach out to go to allvotingislocal.org, or send them an email at voter@allvotingislocal.org. Tell them Charles Ellison at Reality Check, WURD, sent you. And just talk about your experiences, especially last year with mail-in balloting. We had a lot of folks, right, Scott? We had a lot of people, thousands of people around Pennsylvania who were participating in those teletown halls. And, you know, we could see the real-time data from those calls. It was like real-time polling which was taking place. And we would ask the question, okay, at the start of the teletown hall, how do you feel about mail-in balloting? And you have a lot of people who were unsure, weren't as receptive, were a little bit reluctant. By the end of that teletown hall, those numbers were like, they increased dramatically. People were like, you know what, I feel, thank you. Like, I feel comfortable doing this. And then we had the result we had in 2020 last year. So absolutely having these types of conversations are so critical. And I learned that firsthand, like working with you guys doing, I think those teletown halls were stupendous. And then we had constant conversations here on Reality Check WURD. So we want to continue those conversations for the duration to do what we can to push back against this effort to destroy our vote.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, the thing that we're really excited about is that we have an opportunity here to make sure that they don't take away these new tools, right? And I think that's a really important piece that you brought up. Act 77 was brand new. Folks in Pennsylvania didn't have experience with it. And so they were like, what's going on here? What's the deal? And through the education process that a lot of people engaged in, although it could have been better, you know, we saw a lot of people signing up for those ballots. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to keep a sliver of your brain, you know, as you go through this pandemic that we're in and all the stressful things that happen on your voice and your vote, right? Because what we need to do now is make sure that we institutionalize Act 77 and we give election officials the tools that they need to execute it in a way that is more cost-effective and easier for them. One of the pieces for that is getting pre-canvass passed in the legislature, which would allow cities and municipalities to begin processing and scanning ballots up to 30 days before the election, right? And that we don't have to wait. The whole world won't have to wait, you know, in the next 4 years when we have another presidential election for our results. And at the same time, that gives an opportunity for voters to actually be contacted by their election officials and cure or remedy any issues with those mail-in ballots. And that's something that's really important.
Just an interesting question with respect to what you just said, Scott. There's just a listener here, Junior Lee, who's watching us on WURD TV. The interesting concept here he proposes, how about having a pre-voting system that a voter can vote by party at one time for up to 3 election cycles? That's fascinating. I haven't heard of anything like that, but have you? And also, Junior Lee also asked, just to add to that real quick, is there an active national campaign to highlight? Because you got this active national campaign to destroy our vote. But, I mean, what's the national campaign to highlight the voter suppression laws? I see efforts happening in multiple states. But I'm with Junior Lee on that. That's what we're trying to fix here a little bit with this voting rights threat assessment, is to start bubbling up that national campaign to get some more awareness around that. But real quick, the pre-voting system, is that something that's been talked about?
You know, it's not something that I'm familiar with, and I think that approaching our elections with new ideas is a really good thing. One hazard might be that, you know, the landscape could change and new information comes out as you sort of cast that ballot in those upcoming elections. But, you know, I think that everything should be on the table right now, and especially considering what voters want. Right. And so, you know, I'm not sure that's a policy I can say that we support right now, but I can say that, you know, voters using their voice and talking about the election and proposing changes, especially to their officials, and feel free to email us at voter@allvotingislocal.org. And we can have a longer conversation about that. You know, what I would say on the sort of national campaign is there's a lot of organizations right now looking at the best way to, I think, do two things. We want to do a soothing message to folks and let them know that, hey, you've been told a lie, and you've been told a lie on purpose, and it was sent to you to hurt elections and to hurt your, you know, perspective on elections. And then, you know, you got to do a thing where instead of sort of correcting the record and saying there was no fraud, because if you say that, people just think there is more, right? Unfortunately. What you really need to say is there are multiple layers of security built into our election system, and the way that those function is really important so that we can have faith and confidence in our systems. And even with this polling information, we're seeing that a lot of times voters aren't aware of the security protocols that's in there, that are used for the mail ballots, that are used for early voting sites, and building up that confidence is important. So this polling is important. I think we've got some federal efforts on bills that will raise the profile. And I think what you're going to see is a concerted campaign to not only push back on this state legislature sort of attack mode that a lot of states are dealing with right now, but also a really robust public education campaign to sort of soothe and, you know, then make sure that, you know, we're inoculating against more lies out there, to the electorate.
That's right. Scott Seaborg, Executive Director, Pennsylvania, for All Voting is Local. Go to allvotingislocal.org for more information. Voter@allvotingislocal.org if you'd like to reach out to them, have more questions about what's happening on the voting rights front, this threat from voter suppression, and also how you can get involved. You know, share your stories. In fact, Junior Lee, by the way, too, Scott, had said that his sister has ALS, and voting by mail was great for her. This is that same listener or viewer on WURD TV. So thank you for sharing that too, Junior Lee. So if there are other people out there, other listeners who want to share those stories, voter@allvotingislocal.org. Scott, thanks so much for your time. Always appreciate it. So we'll be talking with you again very soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Really great to be here, and so important to talk about this. Thank you, Charles.
Absolutely. Thanks for this work. Appreciate you. Be safe out there. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, phone lines are open, and we will take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check, WURD.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
Hello, entrepreneurs, especially if you're in the food delivery space. CBD is one of the fastest growing health and wellness categories out today. And as it is now legal, you can expand your customer base and increase revenues per ticket by using this as a specialty food offering. CBDmealsdelivered.com is now for sale and would be a perfect website to integrate with your existing food delivery website. Thank you.
WURD Words from our past. Word Radio celebrates the powerful voices of Black history. Reverend Dr. Leon H. Sullivan.
If there is anything in earth that makes man akin to God, it is his power to believe. For things are to us what they are on the basis of what we believe them to be, whether they be true or whether they be false. If, for example, you believe that a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, then for you this is true in spite of the fact that there is no such thing as a straight line in a crooked world.
Words from our past, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. This episode brought to you by Comcast.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
Okay, Scott wanted to make a correction. It's a voting at allvoterislocal.org. So that email address we put out earlier is a very important email address, voting at allvoterislocal.org. Go to allvoterislocal.org. That's the website. Reach out to them. See how you can help out. That's one way, because people have been asking me that question as we've been highlighting the threat against voting rights, particularly in places like the Pennsylvania legislature. Pennsylvania legislature is breaking records right now compared to other state capitals in terms of the volume of bills or proposals to destroy our right to vote. So people are really worried and anxious about that when they hear about it on Perkit. I want you to feel worried and anxious about it, so so that can spur people into action. And so they're asking, okay, well, what can I do? Who can I contact? Well, definitely you want to contact your state representative and your state senator first, but you also want to reach out to a group like All Voting is Local. They did some great work last year. Highly recommend, reaching out to them, seeing how you can help that cause, contribute to it, because it's, definitely it helps our collective cause. It protects us all. It's an action that helps, that serves to protect us from this evil. It's just straight up evil. I'll say it once again, it's just straight up evil. People just trying to literally destroy our right to vote because they're mad about the election not turning out the way they wanted. Okay, so it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to. Okay, well then, get over it and just get more competitive next election cycle. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. That's all about competing. Just compete fairly, or just play by the rules that have been set during that voting process. And but don't do that by like making up this lie, this false claim that there was corruption in the voting. There wasn't any voter fraud or any instances of people doing any sort of corrupt things in the election, during the election last year. It went relatively smooth considering we were going through a pandemic and also going through the nightmare of a presidency that was the Trump presidency, and just the nightmare of an election and everything that was happening, and everything on top of that. But voting at allvoterislocal.org and allvoterislocal.org as well. So, they do some wonderful work. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. Phone lines will remain open until the 12 o'clock hour. Then a little bit later on in the 12 o'clock hour, we're met by Stephanie Humphrey, our digital lifestyle expert. We have a livelihood segment coming up with Stephanie Humphrey, and that segment being brought to you by Comcast. So we're looking forward to that livelihood tech life segment with Steph Humphrey, and looking forward to what she has to talk about, the latest trends in social media and digital media, which we all need to keep up with. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Junior Lee was also asking earlier on, I guess going back to earlier conversation we were having with Tom Bowman, how do we make the alternatives to fossil fuels affordable for the poor middle class public? It's a very good question. And another big question, we've been talking about this off and on, Junior Lee, and we're going to talk about it more. How can black communities benefit economically with the switch to alternative energy? It's a very good question. We need to start transitioning now from, but we need to start connecting environmental justice to environmental economics. because, you know, especially you hear folks like Tom Bowman, he came on. I'm hearing a lot more folks. I'm hearing also a lot of converts, you know, people who are conservatives or who are Republicans. You know, they're looking at these calamities unfold. You know, they used to be climate deniers, but, you know, they found the grift. Like, you know, they're saying, oh, wow, you know, see, that's when people come around on climate crisis, when they find out that there's money to be made. You know, that, oh, you know, there's always money. You know, it's disaster economics, it's disaster capitalism. And so, you know, people make money off of other people's misery and other people's calamities, other communities' calamities. And you know, and I guess, you know, to a certain degree, you know, that's all fine and dandy if, you know, one, you're not continuing to threaten our communities, you're not continuing to impose your racist mindset or outlook on our communities. And, you know, we've all kind of struck a deal where everyone benefits economically, and people benefit from the hard work of communities who will be hired to do the frontline work of, you know, within that clean energy, sustainability, resilience sector. But I mean, it's happening now, you know, so folks who thought that this wasn't a real thing, either when they, you know, like Tom Bowman, when he described that situation in Kansas, when that whole town of conservative white people got wiped out by a tornado, it was highly unusual. You know, they realized, oh, wow, oh, so that's climate crisis. Yeah, I'm telling y'all. And then they totally rebuilt their whole town and made it green. And they understood that there was a, you know, there was a profit imperative that was built into that. So they're like, you know, they got to make a living, and that's fine. You know, so that all, I mean, if we can have more people building up green, you know, I don't care what their mindset is, as long as they're, you know, accomplishing the you know, the greater good on this. But let's not, in the process, while everybody else is suddenly getting evangelized on climate action, let's not get left behind. Let's not get left behind. So it's now transforming environmental justice conversations, transforming environmental justice into environmental economics. That's going to be really important, because there's billions of dollars out there to be made. We cannot lose sight of that. I'm all for talking about environmental justice, but I want to know, but, you know, really, I also understand, like, the, you know, the true solution to environmental justice is building up the environmental economics, you know, so making that transition from that fossil fuel economy to that clean energy economy, because, you know, they'll have us stuck doing either old fossil fuel, dying fossil fuel economy jobs, or not having any jobs at all, or not, or setting up barriers to entry into the sustainability, clean energy, resilient sector. You know, and that could range from, you know, simple things like, you know, getting those jobs, like in a city like Philadelphia, which is ramping up solar installation. Okay, well, it's a city that's 45% black. Okay, well, 45% of the people installing solar panels all throughout the city should be black employees, for example. So it's everything from that to waste management. You know, people are now tapping into technology and new technologies and new ways of cleaning up waste, recycling that waste into energy, figuring out ways. I mean, people are making whole businesses out of cleaning up plastics and streams and waterways and tributaries. You can make a business out of that. And, you know, so like, okay, well, how do we, and there's like investors, you know, who want to put, so it's like we should be benefiting. We've been bearing the brunt of all of this waste and pollution and the troubles that are happening in our climate, the stress on Mother Nature. We bear the brunt of that. So I feel like, okay, as we're fixing that, we should gain from the solution. We should gain from the fix. And so, yeah, I mean, we should be taking part in that environmental economics grift too. So as people are starting to wake up, and that's when things are going to come around in a state like Pennsylvania, for example. Heavy reliance right now, you know, you got a lot of folks making money on fracking and natural gas. And so, and some people can't, it's going to be hard for them to break from it. But once someone has, either a policymaker, an investor, or some sort of, you know, business trade group has made a convincing case that there is way more money to be made doing this clean energy thing than being stuck with this natural gas thing, the gold rush begins. And I'm just saying, we cannot get left behind, because they will leave us behind. They do it all the time. But the gold rush will begin. Then suddenly you'll see this big shift. Then you'll see those Republicans out in places like Harrisburg. They're like, oh yeah, clean energy, that's our thing. They'll be putting money into it. And poor black folks in Philly will not see any of that money. They will not see, they'll set it up like that. So, we just have to continue to have that conversation and spark awareness around it to ensure that that doesn't happen. I don't want that happening. And I know you don't want, that's why these discussions, you understand what I'm getting at? These discussions, one, there's the public health component, keeping us protected, keeping our communities and our children protected from the toxicity in our environments, in the places we live, and also, protecting the environment and trying to mitigate the impact from climate crisis and things like that. Yeah, that public health component is crucial. And then there's that, there's that economics component. That's the future. That's where everything is headed in terms of how economies are going to are rebuilding themselves. Also, don't forget, to continue to hear conversations like this and to get that kind of information and intelligence, you don't get that anywhere else. Particularly as far as black media is concerned, you don't get that anywhere else other than WURD. I mean, we focus on those types of issues daily and constantly, full time. We are an essential Black History institution. So to continue to support that, go to wordradio.com/join now and sign up for your 4WURD membership today. It is just $90 per year, but I'll break that down a little bit more for you. That's like $1.73 per week. $1.73 per week. So some people out there can handle that. And but you get so much more out of it. And then you're part of a movement. You're supporting an effort to keep not only these conversations and these dialogues alive, but also to keep that momentum going, keep that action going to make our communities, to protect our communities and make our communities better. So we do that as best we can here at WURD. We do, and we're real sincere about that effort. So wordradio.com/join now for more. Okay, let's take a break. Phone lines remain open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open as we head into the noon hour here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Clark Roofing salutes Black History Month with over 30 years of quality roofing experience, providing exceptional customer service, honesty, and professionalism. For service, call 215-365-ROOF. That's 215-365-7663.
This WURD Wellness Vignette is brought to you by Premium Nutrition Meals. WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Helana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Today we're going to talk about green living made easy. So what exactly is green living? It simply means we consider the environment in the way we use, reuse, and recycle every day. When we monitor the waste we create in our homes, we can have a positive impact on the environment, both locally and globally. Green living can look like this. Number 1. Wash and reuse your glass bottles and jars from the grocery store. Number 2, recycle your paper products, boxes, and plastic. Number 3, make your own cleaning products to reduce chemical pollution inside your home. Green living is something we can all do to support our overall health, personally and in our communities. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. This WURD Wellness Vignette was brought to you by Premium Nutrition Meals.
I would like to play a little tune I just composed not so long ago.
Hey family, do you like hearing the best jazz selections aired by 3 of the best jazz announcers in Philadelphia? Well, tune in to 96.1 FM,
96.1 FM,
and 900 AM, WURD Radio, independent black media for Freedom Sounds of Jazz.
Freedom Sounds of Jazz.
Hear Freedom Sounds of Jazz 10 p.m. Fridays with your hosts in rotation, Aquila, Jonathan Bay, and David Fritz. That's 10 p.m. Friday nights on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM independent black media.
Celebrating Black history all day, every day. Medgar Evers.
All we want you to do is keep going with this fight for freedom. When we get this unity, ladies and gentlemen, nothing can stop us.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Philadelphia, independent black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Just going back to, really appreciate genuinely, it's an interesting concept you proposed there, a pre-voting system. So a voter can vote by party at one time for up to 3 election cycles. In 2020, you could vote for the Democratic ticket for the next 3 cycles without going back to the polls. For example, this is the example Junior lays out. In 2020, you could vote for the Democratic ticket for the next 3 cycles without going back to the polls during those next 3 cycles. I can see the pros and cons of that, but I think it's very intriguing. So that's something I want to explore and ask some other people about too, or see if there's a conversation that's going on about that. Haley Stephen Alston was listening to our conversation earlier on with the superintendent. Charles, there is a difference between calling someone out and accountability. There has to be accountability in the picture. Point taken. I agree with you, Haley. So, definitely, in accountability in a lot of instances, it's a long process. Sometimes you can't capture all of it. You can't, achieve as much of it as I'd like to, as we'd all like to, in just 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes worth of conversation with the people we need to hold accountables. But, we continue to have that conversation. We'll continue to have that conversation with folks like the superintendent and others. So let's see how things go with the school reopening. So it's an interesting point. Colleague was making this point that it'll be very fascinating to watch schools reopening in different places around the U.S., particularly in a place like Philadelphia. Schools reopening, but policymakers still meeting virtually. So, so does that mean on March 1st, if Philadelphia students have to go back into buildings and go back into schools on March 1st, does that mean that Philadelphia City Council has to go back into City Hall on March 1st or on that first week of March? So it's, you see that happening all over the country. Schools are reopening in certain places, certain districts and jurisdictions, but the legislators, they're meeting virtually, or they're taking extreme measures to make sure they don't get infected and they don't get sick. So it's, that's something to kind of watch. It's a very interesting kind of dichotomy that's taking place, that's unfolding there as far as school reopenings. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Just as I was saying, in Washington, we're expecting passage of the nearly $2 trillion pandemic relief bill. That'll take place in the House either on Friday or Saturday. And then sometime before mid-March, real battle begins in the Senate. And the Senate hopefully will pass, well, the expectation is the Senate will pass pandemic relief before the expiration of unemployment benefits on March 14th, or the expiration of extended unemployment benefits on March 14th. So we'll be watching that very closely. There's some reports coming out that wages actually grew in 2020. You're probably going to see some news about that. And some people will try to pitch that as signs of a recovering economy. But it's not because of a growing economy. The bottom fell out of the low-wage labor market. So, yeah, historically, wages grew it grew about 7% for the median worker between 2019 and 2020. Okay, so like on its surface, on its face, that looks like, great, wow, wages grew. So some of y'all are probably like, really? Word? For who? Not for me. But wages grew largely because more than 80% of the nearly 10 million net jobs that were lost in 2020, because remember we had a pandemic last year, we're still going through it, but 80% of those 10 million net jobs that were lost in 2020 were jobs that were held by low-wage earners. So people who were at the bottom 25%, at the bottom quarter of wage distribution. So you had 8 million low-wage workers from the workforce, coupled with the addition of 1.5 million jobs in the top half of the wage distribution. So, you know, like the averages got skewed, right? And so it makes it seem like wages grew. Well, yeah, wages grew because then there were fewer people in the workforce who were at the bottom of the wage scale. So that's what you're saying. So that's not a cause for celebration. So, you know, and it's, you know, people are out there, you know, obviously there's certain people who have certain motivations to make it seem as if the economy is doing better when it's not. And so we still have a long way to go. And those sorts of projections and those sorts of statements, those premature statements, are leaving a lot of people behind. And you know who I'm talking about, and many of you out there who are listening in, unfortunately, tragically, are some of those people who've been left behind. Let me go to Kenny out of Alney, who's calling in for a reality check. Kenny?
Hey, Brother Charles, how are you?
Brother Kenny, what's good?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can.
Yeah,
Thank
how are
you.
you?
All right, hanging in there.
Yeah, you just hit three things. Let's start with the last one. You're right. Everyone will be looking like, where did wages grow at for the average worker at
Right.
retail space or just production jobs. Their wages, the production increased. They made money in overtime, but their base salary stayed the same.
Right.
So that didn't happen. But that one important piece that you started off with after this last commercial break was that they want the kids back in school, but administration, will they be in the administrative building answering to parents and constituents of their issues or problems that they may have with the kids in school? It may not be illness or dirt, it may be just academic. Will there be people there to assist with that?
Right.
Then, it's, like you said, the elected officials, this pandemic has, to me, has made it easy for them to hide and to present legislation and bills because a lot of people are not on Zoom or don't have that capability to call in or, you know, to voice a opposition or complaint to those particular bills because they just don't have the access.
Yeah.
So with that, are they going to change to meet the needs of the people, or are they going to stay? That's the question they would have to answer. I know you can't answer, but I'm wondering, because still the time that was wasted by Superintendent Height is ridiculous, because the school should, and you went to school in the city of Philadelphia before you went outside.
Right.
That same building probably still got some of those same dirty spots from when you was a kid in there that are still there now. So what are they doing different? Did they do different during this time when no one was in the building to bring that school, to make the parents, not elected officials, make the parents feel safe that, hey, this building is cleaner than what it's ever been.
Right.
They didn't do that. Thanks, brother. That was it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Brother Ken. Those are big questions. You know, so, and we have to keep a very close eye as people do go back and, okay, so two things at least that have to happen in the immediate term. One, as students return to schools, is going to be absolutely crucial for parents, for families, for community groups, for advocates, activists, concerned citizens, to get a report, to get an assessment on, okay, the physical state of those school buildings. Like okay, so everything that he said, like for example, he was saying, hey, we've replaced water fountains or water hydration systems in the school. Like that was one thing he was saying. Like, yeah, we did this, we did that. We've done a lot of the rehabilitation in the schools. Since before pandemic, when things, news had broke out and it was kind of scandalous, where you had so many X number of Philadelphia school buildings, that were basically sick buildings. So now, we need to assess that. We need to evaluate that and take him on it. We're taking him on his word as he comes here on WURD, and he says, hey, I've done X, Y, Z. Okay, so we need to start kind of putting together a community report card. People need to call into this station. They need to call into programs like this and say, hey, okay, my child returned to X school, and these things, here are the things that went right, but here are the things that went wrong. These are the things my child saw, or these are the things I saw when I returned my child back to that building. We went inside the building, and no, we didn't like the condition of the bathrooms. We didn't like there was a weird smell in the building. We didn't like, just looking at those things and kind of keeping, in some cases, informal report cards or informal evaluations, or trying to come together as a community and kind of coming up with like some kind of big evaluation system, a community evaluation system to see, okay, are these things being fixed, or have they been fixed for the schools or for the students? So we need to look at those things and kind of and go down that checklist. So that's one. And then two, moving forward, is the long-term evaluation and assessment to see, okay, what's going on with the state of the school buildings, but also, how are you making the school system more accessible and more responsive to the needs and the concerns of parents and students? And what are we doing? How are we fixing? So he's saying he's aware of like these serious academic problems. He didn't deny that that's on the district scorecard, but he had an explanation for that. He was saying, well, there was a lot of cheating that was happening in terms of assessment scores, and it was found out. So now we're getting real raw numbers, and so he's working with what he's got, and so we need to now see like the unveiling of a very bold, ambitious plan to increase academic achievement in the city of Philadelphia among city schools. So we're going to explore that a lot more here on this program and others as well. Let me go to Madeline out of Overbrook, who's calling in for a reality check. Ms. Madeline?
Hi, and thank you so much for taking my call. Now, I need to talk about three things, if I can. I'm going to be as brief as I can. Number one, the Senate not wanting to give us that $15 an hour minimum wage. I think it is absolutely ridiculous. We gave away $3 trillion to big businesses in was it 18 or 19?
You're talking about last year with the CARES Act?
No, before, not 20. It was 19 or 18 when Trump gave us, I think it was the CARES Act. But it
okay, so yeah, 2020 businesses got $500 billion, and but then the 2017 tax cut, yeah, I mean businesses, corporations got. You're absolutely right, Ms. Madeline. They got about $1 trillion worth of tax relief.
You mean everyday folks got $1 million worth of tax relief? Or big businesses.
Businesses, yeah, big businesses, banks.
That's what I'm talking about. The businesses got their subsidy. They got their welfare. Where's that? $15. Nothing is satisfactory to me but $15 an hour. I told them from the beginning. I thought we're not gotten involved this time because I'm sick of us not getting what we need. Okay, so that's where I was with that. And they said it would work as hard as they can. And then he go to sit and Romney. They got more money than Carter got liver pills. So I'm going to say this. I don't know how you can pass this message along. The United States senators and congresspeople who don't think people need $15 an hour, let's take $5 an hour off of your pay. I know you don't get paid by the hour, but we can do the arithmetic and come up with the amount of money that you need to give to help these poor people. They so poor. I know you're sorry they're poor, so just give them some of your money. And let's see how that works out, number one. Number two, history. We have got to have black history. I think I said it a million times, taught from the beginning, before the first slave ship went over there. What were we doing? What did we build? I can't think of his name with the math. What's his name with the math? Anyway, this is the kind of history we need all across this country, so everybody knows who we are. So you don't get excited and mad because I can answer the question that you couldn't, or Johnny could do something that Ronnie couldn't do. It's in us. It's in us. We built the pyramid, and the pyramids can't not lay it out by math here right now. And last but not least, coming down to Cody. Cody was a friend. He came to the station. I was tight with George Woods and the folks out there. We had a great time. He took it over, and then he helped whatever was in the community. I needed to do a fundraiser for David P. I called Cody. Would he be our MC? Him and Eleanor Jean Henley got right on the job. And then I can't remember. It's not too long ago. We did something for over on Columbia Avenue, Marcus Garvey. We helped with a fundraiser over there, and I had Cody. Dr. Wright was here from Chicago. Ed Robinson spoke. Dr. Lomax was there. It was awesome. It was a fundraiser for their artwork, and for David it was when people come to Harrisburg, he would invite them to go get lunch on him. So he had a tab. And one day he said, no, my tab is like, they threatening me. And I said, let's see what we can do. And we got busy. And then, because David was a fighter, you don't have them kind of representatives now. When you took the problem to him, he took it to the floor of the House. He took it to the legislative body. And didn't always work. But they was intent in that if the people who had been on welfare got to buy a house, then they were going to put a lien against it. Yeah. And David intended they wasn't going to do it. And they didn't do it. And he got help because the white people had to get on welfare too. And so then, they're going to lose their house too. So they just cut that out. But whatever it was, he put a lot of energy into making it happen. Can we make energy happen for these people here in Philadelphia? If Philadelphia turned out to vote, we would never lose a seat in the state of Pennsylvania again. Thank you, sir. God bless you. I appreciate you. And tell Barbara Lomax I got her the 1st of March. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thank you. I appreciate you too, Ms. Madeline. Thank you so much. And thanks for calling in. Thanks for sharing all that, Ms. Madeline, making some strong points. And definitely we need to take heed. Let me take a break. When we come back on the other side, Stephanie Humphrey is our livelihood tech life expert. So we have a livelihood segment, Tech Life, with Steph Humphrey is coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
WURD Radio celebrates Black History Month with Black Artist Story 365. Brought to you by Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of revolutionary poet Gil Scott Heron. King Gil was born in Chicago, Illinois. His mother, Bobby Scott, was an opera singer who performed with the New York Oratorio Society. His father, Gil Heron, nicknamed the Black Arrow, was a Jamaican soccer player in the 1950s who became the first black man to play for the Celtic Football Club in Glasgow. What? Heron decided to attend Lincoln University because Langston Hughes, his most important literary influence, was an alumnus. After about 2 years at Lincoln, he took a year off to write the novels The Vulture and The Nigger Factory. Uncle Gil was very heavily influenced by the Black arts movement and the last poets. Although King Uncle Gil never completed his undergraduate degree, he was admitted to the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins University, where he received an MA, that's a Master of Arts, in creative writing. His music, most notably on the albums Pieces of a Man and Winter in America in the early 1970s, influenced and foreshadowed later Black music genres such as hip-hop and neo-soul. King Duke Uncle Gil is considered by many to be the first rapper/MC ever. His recording work received much critical acclaim, especially one of his best-known compositions, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised.
You will not be able to stay home, brother.
Given the political consciousness that lies at the foundation of his work, we'll say star Uncle Gil was the founder of political rap.
You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune in to The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
Black Artist Story 365 was brought to you by Southwest Leadership Academy Charter School and the Pennsylvania Lottery. Get to winning with Win, 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 the new scratch-off from the Pennsylvania Lottery, with top prizes of $500 grand. Players must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly. Benefits older Pennsylvanians every day. WURD Radio celebrates Black History Month with Black Artist Story 365, brought to you by Pico and JD's Auto Body.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of Academy Award-winning production designer Hannah Beachler. Hannah Beachler is an American production designer. Madam Beachler grew up in Centerville, Ohio, and graduated from the University of Cincinnati, where she studied fashion design. Then she attended Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, where she studied film. Her first major collab was with the celebrated director Ryan Coogler on 2013's Fruitvale Station. Coogler later hired her to work as his production designer on Creed, and then later on, Black Panther. Hannah's set design work can also be seen in the Miles Davis biopic Miles Ahead and for the film Moonlight. While we could say her coup de production gras was her Afrofuturist design direction swag in Black Panther, let us all bow down and agree that her design work for Beyoncé's 2016 TV special and visual album Lemonade is the visual holy grail. Of course, now she's an Academy Award winner and the first African-American woman to be nominated or to win an Oscar for Best Production Design. Okay? We honor the art and artistry of star cousin Hannah Beachler. So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune in to The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
Black Artist Story 365 is brought to you by Pico, powering communities, and JD's Auto Body and Painting for all your auto body and detailing needs. Livelihood, WURD Radio's new initiative, connecting Black Philadelphians with jobs, entrepreneurship resources, small business development information, and financial literacy tools. Learn more at wordworks.com. That's WURD-WORKS.com. And stay tuned to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right. Welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDRadio.com, WURD TV, WURD app, and we have Livelihood. We have our regular Livelihood segment with Steph Humphrey, digital lifestyle expert. You also see her on, well, you hear her and see her on WURD quite frequently, particularly on programs like Reality Check. But you also see her on Good Morning America, ABC. Talks about digital lifestyle issues and solutions and tips and etiquette. All those important things you need to know in this digital age. Stephanie, always good to see you. Thanks so much for joining.
Good to be here.
All right,
Thank
excellent.
you.
All right, excellent, excellent. You know, I've been talking a lot about and also participated in, finally got around to it one evening, Clubhouse. Tell us about Clubhouse. Clubhouse is all the new rave right now, right? People are also trying to get their Clubhouse invitation.
Listen, Clubhouse invites are being sold on eBay right now. That is how desperately people want to be a part of this platform. And I suppose it's for good reason. Clubhouse is a invite only, audio only, live real-time chat app. So you can drop into conversations with anyone across the globe on any number of topics. You have the option to listen, or you can actually raise your hand and join the conversation, which I think is a big part of the allure. Number one, that it's audio only, so you don't have to get dressed up or put pants on. Number two, that you have a chance to be a part of that conversation. So you might actually be sharing a stage with Elon Musk or Simone Sanders or MC Hammer or somebody like that, or Oprah even. So it's that proximity to celebrity, and the idea that you are actually in some sense rubbing elbows with those people that I think attracts a lot of people. But it's also a great platform to get deals done. A lot of business gets done on these platforms. A lot of folks have raised money for their businesses. You know, speed dating happens on this platform. I actually dropped into a Clubhouse wedding reception the other day. So yeah, there's so many different types of use cases for this platform, and the creators are just coming up with new and innovative ways to leverage it every single day.
Wedding receptions. Okay, yeah. So we wouldn't know about these things if not for Steph Humphrey, our digital lifestyle expert. So and thank you. I want to also thank Comcast for making this segment possible, by the way, Steph. Comcast powering our livelihood tech life segment here with Steph Humphrey. So, okay, so Clubhouse got all these new, interesting, fascinating things that are happening. What do we need to be aware of as we're stepping into Clubhouse? Okay, so I had no idea that people were buying Clubhouse invitations on eBay.
It is, and I'm feeling like I should probably sell a couple of mine, you know, just to make a couple dollars. I have some Clubhouse invites if anybody's interested, but I think the biggest issue is around privacy. There are quite a few different privacy considerations that are happening on the platform right now. The first of which is that to get the full functionality out of the platform, you don't have to do it, but to get the full functionality out of the platform, you have to give them access to your contacts on your phone, because that is how people get the invites. You can download the app, but you'll be sitting there until someone sends you an invite, and they do that via text message. So the only way you can send that invite via text is if you give the platform access to your contacts. So that's a whole ball of worms by itself. But then there's the idea that Clubhouse does save the chats unencrypted for a period of time that they do not designate. So if someone reports abuse in a room while you're in a chat and somebody does something and someone wants to report it, Clubhouse will save that chat to investigate the report, to do whatever sort of mitigation they have to do, but they don't specify how long they save the chat. And then the fact that they save it unencrypted is also another issue as well. And then the third big privacy piece, and I just read something about this again today, is that the platform, the back-end platform that Clubhouse is built on, it's from a company called Agora, if I'm not mistaken. And they are a Shanghai-based, a Chinese-based company that also has access to a lot of your personal information, if not all of it.
Yeah, you read my mind, because I was about to ask you about that, because there was a Stanford University study, I think just came out, Stanford Internet Observatory Cyber Policy Center, they put out a study, there was a blog on their site, Clubhouse in China, is the data safe? And they talk about that. Yeah, you know, we should be, kind of side-eyeing Clubhouse right now. Do we feel like that's secure? Okay, so, you got the issue of, and, there's this constant tension between this global competition between the U.S. and China. And, China's one of those countries that has that ability to hack and probe and do it quite well. So there's that. but then there is the just overall security. I mean, is it a safe, secure place? I mean, to be having these really important discussions, profitable discussions, intimate discussions on a platform like this, how secure is it?
I honestly, I would probably say not very, unfortunately. I mean, this was the same issue we saw with TikTok when former President Trump was trying to shut TikTok down because of these same types of concerns around the Chinese government, because it's not even a question of hack necessarily. Their government can control their businesses and demand information, at any time. So it wouldn't even be a matter of necessarily the platform being hacked per se. It could be a matter of the government just forcing the company to hand over information because that's just the way their government works. So I think we're going to see a lot of the same sort of considerations and issues now that it has come to light that this back end is being supported by this company, and they're going to have to do something pretty serious to address that. Yeah.
We're talking with Steph Humphrey, our tech life expert here in our livelihood segment on Reality Check WURD. I always look forward to these sessions with Steph because I'm learning something new every day. Like I can hustle my Clubhouse invitations on eBay. Like here you go, y'all. But make a little extra money on the side after this Wednesday edition of Reality Check. But and this being brought to you by Comcast. Steph, okay, so you got Clubhouse. But I know, real quick stuff before I go on, in case anyone has a question, if they have like a digital etiquette, digital lifestyle question, feel free to call us, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. I'd be remiss if I didn't put that out there because somebody always comes up with a really good question or a really good idea.
Your listeners are on it, man. They are really thinking critically about these types of things.
Very
and they should
sharp
be.
folks. Yes, they are. They are. So, please feel free to call in with a question or a comment, as we have this digital lifestyle discussion. So Twitter, I'm hearing, has something called Spaces that they're beta testing.
It's still in beta.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't think I had made it into that beta category for a while, but recently I saw at the top of my feed, there was a conversation going on that I could get into. And it's interesting because it's wildly sort of unregulated. I popped in for a minute and listened, but you sort of automatically join the conversation as a speaker. Clubhouse does give you that ability to control who gets to speak and who doesn't. Twitter kind of throws you in the fray, and it just gives everybody, it's not the same concept as different rooms based around different topics. It's just everybody gets their own space, basically. So, you would join Stephanie's space, or I could join Charles's space, and people could just come in there and have a conversation about, whatever you wanted to talk about. So it seems a little bit different in that regard, and it'll be interesting to see if that catches on. I will say that I think the idea of real-time live audio only chat is going to be a thing that will catch on as we move forward. Whether or not Clubhouse or Twitter is still at the forefront of that will be, remains to be seen. But I think this audio only chat is here to stay.
I think so too. Calvin out of Delaware has a question for us, Steph, here on our Tech Life livelihood segment. Calvin, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, Charles. How you doing? And good afternoon,
Good afternoon,
Stephanie.
sir.
Hey, Charles.
Hi. I had a question. If you have a VPN on your computer, do you have to pause it if you want to be able to access Zoom conferences? Like with the Zoom conferences, I can see the people, I can hear the people, but they can't hear me. So
there may be a firewall issue on either your end or their end because of the VPN. Maybe your Zoom client or their Zoom client is recognizing that you do have a VPN, so there may be a firewall issue on one of the ends there, or it could just be an extreme lag in the audio, because to use a VPN means that the data gets routed through multiple data servers around the world, really, to keep your information secure and private. It kind of tries to, psych the internet out, if you will, with regards to where the information is coming from, the starting point of the data, which is your computer. So the fact that it has to go through multiple points of contact to get to that other Zoom client might be holding you up as well. So it could be either one of those things.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, Calvin. Appreciate that that question. VPN, for those who don't know, VPN, what is that, Stephanie?
It's a virtual private network. So when you type in a URL, when you type in www.wordradio.com in your computer, in your browser, that sends an IP address and a lot of other information from your computer to WURD servers, and then you get the information you want from them and it sends it back. But all of that personal information about you and your computer and where and your location and different things like that gets transmitted to WURD. It gets transmitted to whoever you pay for your internet access to, so Comcast or AT&T or whoever. And some people don't want that information transmitted across electronic lines, especially if they're searching for things or transacting illegal activities over the internet. So a virtual private network would mask your identity on the internet. Now, granted, it's not foolproof because digital forensics is a thing, and there's still some government agency that eventually would be able to kind of trace it back to you. But for all intents and purposes, it makes you invisible as you surf the web.
Got it. All right. And now, speaking of masking your identity, masking privacy, virtual privacy, just real quick, I want to go to before I let you go, Stephanie, the kids, right? The kids have been going through a really rough moment with this pandemic, having to stay at home for the most part, to get educated. And so they're using digital tools in a very historic, unprecedented way. But what do we need to, I mean, they're not just on remote classrooms or in Zoom environments with their classmates and teachers. I'm assuming that, do we have an issue here, or are we seeing trends where we really need to watch our children and kind of where they're venturing in cyberspace? And like, what do we need to like watch out for, look out for with respect to Gen Z? That's our new generation now, and their digital and social media habits.
Definitely, especially for the younger students, but for any students right now that are distance learning, I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give to parents is make sure they understand not to share any information, like your name, where you go to school, your age, and there should be any of your Zoom links that, link to the Google Meet that, or the Google Meet links that your teachers are providing for you. Don't share any of those things. Folks are getting Zoom bombed and people are crashing different distance learning classes online with pornographic material and things like that. So I think the first line of defense is making sure your young person understands not to share any information online, like literally none. That would be my first piece of advice.
Yeah, like people have nothing better to do but then to Zoom bomb.
Listen, I got Zoom bombed on I was doing a Zoom for a corporate client of mine, and I was speaking to some college interns, and we got Zoom bombed because that link got shared out wider than it should have went beyond the group of interns. And when I tell you that was a traumatic experience for me, to this day, I'll never forget it, because that imagery is now burned into my subconscious and my conscious mind, and it was so objectionable and so unexpected and so just offensive. I can't imagine a third grader, having to deal with that. So, definitely help your children understand that bad things happen on the internet and that they can come to you and talk about them if they need to, process them if they need to, work through them, but they should really be making sure that they are not giving away any personal information whatsoever, any information that comes from their school or their teacher, to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, and friends and fam don't let friends and fam Zoom bomb.
Seriously.
Report
check
your friends for check your peoples for doing that. That's just like really, there's just so many words for that. I'm like, that's another conversation for another day. Like you need some serious, if you're doing that, if you happen to be in the listening audience, you're doing that, you need some therapy or some prosecution like especially if you're doing that to young children. We were talking this stuff. It's wild. It's a wild frontier out there. But Steph Humphrey makes sense of it all. Yes, please, Steph. Like just make it make sense, as they say.
Listen, I'm fighting the good fight, Charles.
I know you are. You are. Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. So I don't envy you. But that's why we bring you on for our Tech Life Livelihood segment with Steph Humphrey, being brought to you by Comcast. Steph, thanks so much. You can find her on LinkedIn, as I finally have. And where else can people find you too, Steph? Where are other places? I know LinkedIn is one spot, but there's some other places.
But I'm all around the web at Tech Life Steph. You can always find me at Tech Life Steph.
There you go, at Tech Life Steph. Absolutely. So we'll definitely stay in touch, and looking forward to talking to you next time. Take care. Be safe out there.
Awesome. You too. Thanks for having me.
Right. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll have phone lines open while we wrap up this Wednesday, midweek edition of Reality Check. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm actually at Ellison Report on Twitter.com and on LinkedIn a little bit more, thanks to Steph. You can find me there as well, CD Ellison on LinkedIn. But let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with open phone lines.
WURD Radio celebrates Black History Month with Black Artist Story 365. Brought to you by AARP, Thomas Jefferson, and New Voices for Reproductive Justice.
Welcome to Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. Get into this episode where we explore the art and artistry of Trinidadian American, Tony Award-winning actor, voice actor, singer, dancer, composer, choreographer, costume designer, visual artist, and director, Jeffrey Holder. Part 1. King star Uncle Jeffrey was an August Leo, born Jeffrey Lamont Holder of Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, the youngest of 5 children of Louise de France and Arthur Holder, who had immigrated from Barbados. Bosco Holder taught Jeffrey painting and dancing and recruited him to join a small folkloric dance troupe he had formed, the Holder Dancing Company. Bosco was 16, listen, and Jeffrey was 7. Okay? When Bosco left for London, Jeffrey was left in charge of the dance company as its director and lead performer. Soon after arriving in Brooklyn, he joined the Catherine Dunham's dance school, where he taught folkloric forms for 2 years. From 1955 to 1956, he performed with the Metropolitan Opera Ballet as a principal dancer. He left the ballet to make his Broadway debut in the Harold Arlen and Truman Capote musical, House of Flowers. While working on House of Flowers, he met Alvin Ailey, with whom he later worked extensively, and his future wife and muse, Carmen de Lavallade. After the show closed, he starred in an all-black production of Waiting for Godot in 1957. As a choreographer, because you know he's got all them lists of things that he was masterful at, Holder created dance pieces for many companies, including Alvin Ailey, American Dance Theater, for which he provided choreography, music, and costumes for Prodigal Prince in 1967, and the Dance Theater of Harlem, for which he provided choreography, music, and costumes for Douglas in 1974. He was director, costume designer, and choreographer, as we mentioned, in The Wiz in 1974. And in 1978, he directed and choreographed the Broadway musical Timbuktu. So that's it for this episode of Black Artist Story 365. My name is Envy McKee. To hear more, tune in to The Envy McKee Show, Friday nights, 7 to 10 p.m., right here on WURD.
Black Artist Story 365 was brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania, Thomas Jefferson, and New Voices for Reproductive Justice.
Tune in on Thursday, February 25th at 7 p.m. when EcoWord will partner with New Voices for Reproductive Justice for a special live broadcast of Black Women, Green Future, Environmental Justice, and New Political Landscape, co-hosted by Sincerely Sarita. Tune in Thursday, February 25th at 7 p.m. See you then.
Brought to you by Comcast. Tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. for the Did You Know Show with host Bryant Green, right here on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM.
Hello, I'm Jose Hernandez, and I have been using a wheelchair since my accident in 1995. I guess if I had one message for the general public, it would be that I appreciate your help, but please ask first. I know you mean well, but I've actually got everything under control. And if I don't, I'll ask for assistance. People with disabilities just want the same respect and consideration as everyone else.
This is a message from United Spinal Association. Download our disability etiquette booklet at unitedspinal.org.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Cliff out of Connecticut calling in for a Reality Check. Cliff.
Hey, Chuck, let's take my call. Listen, one quick brief point. Listen, in terms of what happened on the 6th, the insurrection, let me say this and see if this makes any sense to you. If those electors voted for Trump, there would never have been a problem. You wouldn't have these people, the Republicans, upset. They wouldn't want to riot, the whole 9 yards. And basically the Democrats wouldn't want to do anything because that's the system. So now they're upset at the same system that Trump got in the same way before 2015. Right. Now they're upset because he didn't get in with the same process.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm pretty much saying that, you know, what's the common factor? What's the problem here? And I'm saying the problem is the Electoral College. That's what they got a problem with. They didn't have a problem with the popular vote. They basically and essentially had a problem with the Electoral College.
But I'll take it a step further, Cliff, though. Like, we can't miss that that key ingredient or element in the Electoral College that won it for Democrats, that made Republicans lose last year, as far as the presidential election is concerned, and that's black people leveraging the Electoral College. That's when people got angry and upset. Let's be real about that. Like, black people flexed muscle in the electoral. We made the Electoral College, and I keep saying that, and I'm going to keep saying it. That's not because I like the Electoral College or I believe in the Electoral College. I'm just saying that there are moments in time when some of those processes and systems that are out there, black people have successfully weaponized them against the racist and the white supremacists. We did that in 2020, and we need to recognize that. And so, because it's not because the Electoral College, Cliff, I know you want to get rid of the Electoral College. I would love to get rid of the Electoral College too, but it's going to take a while before we get rid of the Electoral College. So in the meantime, let's continue to flex and leverage black people, indigenous folks in Arizona, and folks in other places. But particularly black voters in those states. That's how we won those states in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Georgia got flipped.
Okay.
Because of black folks. It's because of black folks leveraging that and muscling up in that Electoral College. Let's not lose sight of that. So that's what they got upset about. They didn't get upset at the Electoral College. They got upset that black folks finally realized, oh, this is how you use this Electoral College. Oh, okay, we want to disrupt this jam. This is a HBCU. At the Electoral College, and that's exactly what we did. That's what they're pissed off about.
Here's my point. Here's my point, and I'll hang after this. Pennsylvania. Did Biden win Pennsylvania?
He did.
Okay. So now, if there's electors, how many electors you had? 20?
20.
Okay. So the point I'm making is that if those electors did not vote the will of the people for Biden, just say that they wanted, and they did, because again, there was no penalty if they did vote. But I'm just saying that there's no.
That's the point. I know. I hear what you're saying, but they didn't.
So listen. What I'm saying that all they had to do was to get, and this is where they, to me, this is where they were stupid and they were dumb, because what they should have did was intimidated the electors in a different way. So when the electors went to vote and cast their certification, they would have reneged and then reversed that. There was nothing that could be done.
I'm not going to speculate like that, Cliff, because they shouldn't have did anything. They should have just, like, there's a process that is in place right now. Some parts of it we like, some parts of it we don't like. And it should have just not broke the law. Like, that would have been breaking the law, intimidating electors or trying to, you're not supposed to do that. And that full stop on that. And we can't speculate or hypothesize what they should have done. No, we're not going to speculate or hypothesize how they should have broke the law. You still there, Cliff? I think Cliff is, okay. Let me take Prince out. But thanks. I appreciate I hear you, Cliff. I do. And I don't like the electoral college either, EC either. But in the meantime, while I was there, we going to use it. We didn't like the courts either back in the day during the civil rights movement. But guess what? We used it. We weaponized it against the segregationists. So that's what we need to like. We can flip the script as far as these processes are concerned. Let me go to Prince out of Schuylkill, who's calling in for a reality check. Prince.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, what's happening?
Good. Well, speaking of technology, is it possible for you guys to schedule online your host and your broadcast and stuff like that? Because in that way, it gives us a chance to say, okay, Dr. Hyde's going to be on, but there's no phone calls. Because if you guys want to have these people on, that we request them to come on because we are suffering the dietary effects in this city right here, then it should be my listeners would like to talk to you, not the host having all this conversation. That's the
okay.
that don't live
So
in.
Prince, I had to explain this to Maurice earlier on. This is the first time, and I had to fight for that to get Dr. Hyde on. I made a judgment. It's my call. It's not WURD. It was my call. Next time he comes on, we'll open up the phone lines. This time, because I had him on for the first time, I had a very small window of time to talk to him and ask him a number of important questions. And it wasn't against you, Prince. It wasn't against Maurice. It was, and I apologize if people took it that way. It was not against the listeners of WURD or people like you and Prince or Maurice who like to call in frequently. It was just I just wanted to just have time to ask some questions. That time would have been eaten up if we had opened up the phone calls, and then you guys wouldn't have gotten any kind of critical intelligence or conversation, because the time would have, he came on late, first of all, so and then by the time I got him, I had to just get through those questions. So I'm sorry if people took it that way, like I'm trying to hide height or I'm screaming. I don't do that. We do have the rule where when they come on, when elected officials in Philly area come on, we open the phone lines up. But in this particular instance, I just made that judgment call. I just needed time with them.
But what I'm saying is that you're not hurting us, because some of us have the ability to meet with Height, to meet with the mayor, and some of us are going to them and saying, hey, I think you need to call this station right here. So you're not doing me any, it doesn't matter that, I just think y'all hold them hostage, but the excuse that he is the first time on, we have the ability to get to these guys. If we can tell you what they do in the city, we can reach these guys.
Fine.
All I'm saying is be more amenable to us, because it's like you're treating millionaires the same way you treating people on.
I reject that notion that that's what I was doing with respect to height.
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying it appears to be.
I don't know what everybody else is doing, but I know I wasn't doing that.
Okay,
I wasn't doing that. I really wasn't protecting height. It's the last thing I was trying to do was protect height. I just needed time with him. And
cool.
and I'm if I'm guilty for that, hey, like I'm good with that.
No,
I'm going to go to sleep tonight feeling okay. Like I reject that notion that I was trying to hide height from everybody or hide them from you.
Listen, I'm not saying that. You made your case. What I'm saying is that we can reach him. You know what I mean? That's okay. But if he comes on this station, he needs to be more amenable, because the question he said about Brendan Boyle in reference to the money coming down, is that the money that he's waiting for Biden to sign off on, or is that the money, where's the money that Donald Trump signed off on? Stop telling me about new money and tell me where the old money went, and I'll hang up and I'll listen to you.
Yeah, no, Prince, very good question. That $900 billion, there's still, there's money floating out there now. Like, remember, we've been so focused on that $900 billion for the rental assistance. About $858 million was of that, from that last Trump money, was being appropriated for rental assistance. Now we need to ask about, okay, well, what monies from that last bit of pandemic that Trump signed off on before he left, where's that money going as far as Philadelphia schools are going? So I'll find out more about that. But thanks, Prince. I appreciate that question. Okay, let me wrap the source with the Black Women's Leadership Council is coming up next. So stay tuned in to WURD and stay tuned in. I want to thank Troy Wilmore as well. I want to thank everyone else, including you, Prince. Thanks for those questions. And every other listener that called in as well. I'm Charles Ellison. Philly and the rest of the nation and the world who's listening in, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please stay safe out there. In some parts, please continue to stay warm. All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow, God willing, at City Council Live, Thursday, 10 a.m. sharp. See you tomorrow. Take care.